Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free.
If the game is rigged, change the game.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Game changer, game changer, game changer, game changer. The Game Changer Radio Network.
Recruiting all of our incarnates towards Jimmy Church.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
All right. How you doing? Wow, it's a great day. This is Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today is Wednesday, the Wednesday edition. June 24th, 176 days into the new year, 189 days left. As always, we are live from the City of Angels Studios right here in downtown Burbank, California. COA Vapor. City of Angels, makers of the Fade to Black e-juice. That's right, it's called Fader Loops. Just go to the COA banner at jimmychurchradio.com. You can use the promo code Jimmy, Jimmy, for the Fader Not special. That is free shipping. Let's do this, man. Tonight's another night to get smart. I'd like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, far and near. This is Fade to Black. For KJCR and the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet, I am your so humble host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? Tonight, we have live in the studio director Paul Davids. That's right, he's live in the bunker. He's sitting over there somewhere in the dock. He can't even see me. You gotta love it. The call-in number is 323-825-5045. You can also Skype in Fade to Black 14. Big proud salute to the men and women in uniform all around the world fighting the good fight for us, for without them there is no me, there is no you, there is no us. And you could not hear me right now. And I really, really need you to think about that for a second. Have you become a Fader Not? Go to faders.org. www.faders.org. Become a Fader Not today. It's fun. It's free. And it is an exclusive club. All right. Let's go. Let's get this show cracking. Got a lot to do today. And before I forget. Oh man, I you know what? I need to I got to do a couple of clicks here. You know what? Because today is a really, 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 really big day. Today's one of the biggest days. Today is Jeff Beck's birthday. And out of all of the cats out there, you know, out of all of the musicians and actors and directors and authors that influence me, there are just a few people out there that have had the power in my life of influence, like Jeff Beck. And today he turned 71 years old. And I had posted out, and it affected me so much. And everybody that listens to this show, you know, I'm a musician, I'm a guitar player. Yeah, all right. But there's only a handful of guys that influence you when you're growing up. And for me, Jeff Beck is one of those guys. And, Jeff Beck, Tony Iommi, Eddie Van Halen, and then everybody else after that, the Santanas and the Ted Nugents of the world. That's secondary stuff. Jeff Beck influenced me to the bone. And not only on the music side of things, but on freedom of thought and the freedom of expressing yourself. To just go out there and let it hang, man. Let it hang in the breeze. He broke off and started a whole new thing, and so where I'm going with that is today's a big day. And Jeff, at the age of 71, is not only still doing it, but he still looks great. And that's it. I just had to rant a little bit on this because it's a really big day, and I think we should all celebrate the Jeffsters. And I posted on Facebook, Jeff friggin' Beck. And I'm watching Twitter right now off to my left, and I can see that the audience is right with me. Look at this. Yes, I agree with everybody. Jeff Beck is the man. So we're going to stop there as far as the birthday celebrations go. But I do want to know right now, everybody out there, I want to know, what's your favorite Jeff Beck album? I kind of cheated today. I posted mine on Facebook. And that's not to say that Wired and Blow by Blow are huge instrumental masterpieces for us all, us musicians. But that's not mine. Those two aren't mine. They could be yours. That's fine. But what is your favorite Jeff Beck album? So let's just light up Twitter with that, and let's move on. Happy birthday, Jeff Beck. All right, and we'll let it go right there. It's great to see this, though, on Twitter. Just go ahead and continue to light it up. Tonight we have in the studio here at the bunker. You know what? I'm gonna kick on the mic. Go ahead and say hi to everybody, Paul.
Well, hello, Jimmy. It's great to be down here in the bunker with you. I just hope it won't give people the impression that I'm full of bunk.
That you're full of bunk?
Yeah. We're very deep here in the bunker, very far underground.
I don't get a chance to, maybe a couple of times a month we have people, guests come in live in the studio, and it's great. But also, this is a bit of a man cave. It's a bit of a ufology type of sanctuary.
Jimmy, just tell me, if we're really so far underground, why is it I can look out the window and see Bob's Big Boy down the street?
Is that, you know what?
That's a hologram.
Yeah. Is that the last Bob's Big Boy in Southern California?
Long live Bob and all the big boys.
Yeah, I think that's,
even if there's only one left.
There used to be Bob's Big Boys everywhere. And now I think the last one, it seems like to me, I don't know if there's another location here, but soon enough in Twitter, somebody's going to pop up with another location of a Bob's Big Boy. But here in Southern California, where they used to be on every street corner, they're gone, man. Bob's Big Boy.
I read on the internet somewhere that they actually invented hamburgers. I read it on the internet. Don't make fun of that.
Hey, speaking of that, and I don't want to get too sideways here early on in the show, but they invented nachos at the Mexican restaurant on Western. I'm trying to think of the name of the place now. I can't believe I can't remember the name of it. But you walk in, and they've got newspaper articles all over the walls and photographs of nachos.
You must be thinking of Taco Bell.
Yeah, right.
It was created by Mr. Bell.
There's pictures of the lady that was the cook, and she did this back in I think it was like the 1930s. But anyway, yeah, Bob's Big Boy inventing hamburgers. That's I thought that was a dude named Hamburger. But okay, let's get back to that in just a second. Where am I with life here? You can email throughout the show, jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Also, you can follow us on Twitter @jchurchradio, and follow us on Twitter with hashtag F2B. That is the Sandbox. I'm very excited tonight to have Paul Davids in here with us. And also last night on the show, which was a great show, tons of email. post and so forth about Daniel Sheehan last night. And it was one of those shows. It was a moment in time. We had a great time. But also, we've got to get him back on the show because everything that I thought, and probably you, the audience out there, probably thought that we were going to cover subjects that we never even got to last night. As great as the show was, we went left and right, and we didn't land on a couple of things. So we will be getting Daniel back here as soon as possible. The show stays booked, and it's not like I have an open day next week or in 2 weeks. Everything is booked. And so we're kind of stuck. And then we've got a couple of things that are going on off into the future in the next month. So that being said, I promise everybody, I got all your email. I read it. I read everything on Facebook. I got all the messages. I got all the text. I saw what was going on Twitter. I did. And I am very aware. Yes, we will be bringing Daniel Sheehan back. And I will try to pull this off in the next month. Okay? That's my promise. With that, let's take our first break. When I come back, well, we've got this day in history. Today is a very important day, and it's kind of appropriate that we have Paul Davids here. And more on that in just a second. This is Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, live in the studio, Paul Davids. Tomorrow night, another rock and roll trivia evening with all of you. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us. Don't touch that mouse.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I gotta tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. Doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Chase Kletsky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station where the Fadernauts rock.
All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Live in the studio tonight, Paul Davids is with us. And how am I going to deal with Paul tonight? Paul's a witness. Check this out. I'm going to even turn on Paul's microphone. I'm going to take a power bite. That's right, live on the air. Paul, what am I doing right now?
You're swallowing some liquid. I can't see what's in your cup.
I just took me a Powervite.
Could be coffee. It could be beer. It could be something.
No. That's Powervites. Powervites. That's how I'm going to deal with Paul Davids tonight. I'm holding a Powervite now, swallowed it, coated, nothing hidden. It is not your typical corporate vitamin company. You can actually see the little specks of nutrients in every single pill, and they smell like vitamins. Powervites are a complete multivitamin mineral formula designed to naturally boost your energy. This multivitamin goes right to work fast. That's why I take them every single night on this show. The Green Turtle Bay Vitamin Company are dedicated nutritionists and have been producing Powervites for over 20 years right here in the United States of America. Go to energywave.com and get your Powervites. Energywave.com. Use the promo code KGRA and get free shipping on your order. Call 1-800-TURTLE-5. That's TURTLE5. Live operators are standing by. 1-800-887-8535. Now, I said before the break that today is an important day in ufology. On this day, two things happened. On this day in 1947 was the day that Kenneth Arnold reported seeing 9 unusual flying objects flying in a chain near Mount Rainier, Washington. That happened, yes, on June 24th, 1947. But also on this day in 1997, which was the 50th anniversary of Kenneth Arnold, which I don't think was a coincidence. In 1997, the United States Air Force reports on Roswell. That's right. On this day in 1997, the United States Air Force officials release a 231-page report dismissing all of the long-standing claims of an alien spacecraft crash in Roswell, New Mexico, and it was almost timed to the minute 50 years later, and that happened in 1997. And it is just one of those things. And is it synchronicity? Is it a coincidence that we have Paul Davids here tonight in the studio? Here's a fader fact for you. Nearly 90%, it's a weird timing on this too. Check this. Nearly 90% of Americans, 90% of Americans eat turkey on Thanksgiving Day. Now, when I found that out today, I had to go deeper because that's an astonishing fact. You know, this is something that you would normally save for Thanksgiving. But as I got into this, this is how my brain works. 90% of Americans are eating turkey on Thanksgiving Day. We got 350 million people here. How many turkeys is that? How much money is that? You know, and so I go and I dig. It's 46 million turkeys are eaten on Thanksgiving in the United States for a whopping total of $4 billion on one single day. And I got to tell you, I'm in the wrong business. Tell you that right now. All right. Listen, I'm going to continue my editorial. This is part 2 of the dark net, deep web, dark web, deep net, invisible web, or hidden web, whatever you want to call it. I want to dig a little bit deeper today, and I'm going to present some more stuff to you. Now, yesterday, as I was talking about Tor, the Onion router, and using Onion extensions and looking for listings of stuff that exists on the dark net, I got emails today about people that went and downloaded Tor. And I don't necessarily approve of that. Nor, I got to put a disclaimer on this. I wasn't encouraging anybody to go there. I had said last night, that's a dark world full of lightning storms, very spooky things, and bad people with bad intentions. And, or at least the stuff that you're going to find. The other stuff, banking information and insurance records that are stored there forever, you're not going to find that, and it's not going to interest you, and who cares? But if you're going to go and check out Tor and start clicking around on websites and getting connected into the deep web, Be very careful. I'm not encouraging that at all, because I can promise you this: in your little days of discovery and learning and going and checking that out, you are going to click on something that you will regret for the rest of your life. It will be the wrong thing to pop up on your screen, and it doesn't matter what it is. So I'm just telling you right now, don't do it. And not unless you've got somebody holding your hand, because you are looking at stuff and clicking on stuff that is that is nameless and encoded. And a lot of that stuff you have to be invited to see in the first place, or to explore, or to purchase, or to read. You need to be very, 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 very careful. Okay, I got more than one email about this today, and I was completely taken aback. That was not my intention last night, and I warned everybody, it is a nightmare. The deep web, the invisible web, the dark web, whatever you want to call it, that is a place that you, in your imagination, have wondered if there was places like that out there. The gates of hell. You know, do places like this exist? Well, you know what? It does. It exists right underneath your feet right now. But just know that it's there. It's not really there for people like you and me. All right? Okay. One of the things that I talked about last night was how large it is and how it is impossible to measure. And I had mentioned last night that Google has indexed 200 terabytes. That's it, 200 terabytes of data. 200 terabytes. In this studio right now, I've got 10 terabytes of hard drives in this in this studio, in the bunker. So that's it. The surface web right now that has been indexed by Google is only 200 terabytes, as large as you think it is. And it is big. The internet's a big place. The surface web is big. It's large. But in reality, Google's only indexed 200 terabytes of data. The deep web, and I need to drive this home, is 7.5 petabytes. Think about that for a second. It is humongous. And by any measurement right now, the numbers that you can extrapolate off of the net, and you can find this in a few different places, is that the dark net is 400 to 600 times larger in magnitude. Think about that. As big as you think the internet is, as large and as big as your imagination can go, the dark net is 400 to 600 times as big. And it's big, and it's full of nasty things. And the people that exist there are there because they don't want you to know. They don't want anybody to know. Now, why would they do that? That underground has developed a subculture that is there. And it includes things like social media racists, crazy cam girls that are doing things that you don't want to see, cam boys, self-harm communities, darknet drug markets, crypto anarchists, and some really crazy transhumanists, not the good kind. Okay? That's what's there. And that's where they need to exist, because they can't exist on the surface web. So if you're going to go and download the Tor and the Onion Router, and you're going to go and do that, and you think you're just going to go like the Wizard of Oz and go skipping up the yellow brick road and go check out some cool things, be very, very careful on what you click on, because you may regret it forever. It will be burned into your retina to your dying days. Okay? Now, when you put all of that in context, that subculture that I was talking about has Method just tweeted, there's nothing wrong with crypto anarchy. No, there's not, is there? Certainly not with this show. But in this subculture of hitmen and crypto anarchists and software developers for malware and fake IDs and fake money and pornography of every flavor and good drugs, all of those things down there, well, you have to remember who those guys are that are doing this, that are printing up counterfeit money and fake IDs and hitmen with silencers that will send you photographs of the proof of their completing the contract. That's what goes on down there. But how do you get good hacking software? How do you hire the right hitmen? How do you get the best fake ID or the best fake money or the best craziest pornography? And the best guaranteed drugs if heroin is your game? You can't go down to the local bar and hire a hitman. And I'm not saying you should, but I'm saying that this actually happens. But where does your reputation come from? And that's where this whole honor among thieves subculture has developed in the dark web. Because what that does is, if you're buying drugs or whatever thing is your flavor or whatever you're looking for, you have the danger of getting arrested, you have the danger of getting beat up or robbed or murdered or what have you. But in the deep web, if you know the right people and you get pulled into the right circles, you can do all of this safely from your home. And that's the crazy part of it, that these thieves and criminals are working together to have safe and honest websites and browsing so you can go and do whatever you want to do. There was so much money flying around in the deep web in the form of Bitcoin and a couple of other cryptocurrencies. PayPal doesn't work. They can find out things. So there's that whole thing. So how do you do a drug transaction in the deep web and know that you're not, that the drugs are going to be real or whatever, the fake IDs that are going to come in the mail, that they're going to be real. Nobody's going to steal your money. Well, this subculture of honesty among these criminals is what's most important about the deep web. I need to drive this home. These guys all want to get along. They all want to have the best reputation out there as being the best hitman, being the best hacker, having the best fake IDs and passports, or the best counterfeit money, or the best heroin, or the best methamphetamines and crystal and acid and pot. They want to have those reputations, so they protect that like it's golden. So if you do go down there and you do some business, it's probably going to get done. Because what are you going to do? Just like any other forums around the web where you can go and comment anywhere about somebody's goods and services and how good they are, how good the movie is, whatever it is, and you can do everybody wants to have 5-star rating. They want a 5 out of 5 out of you. So that heroin arrives in the mail. That counterfeit money is good, and it arrives because your Bitcoins are held in escrow. And the bad guys don't get paid until you let the website know that the stuff came in the mail and it was exactly what you ordered, and you're totally happy. And you're going to give this guy a 5 out of 5 star. That's what's going on. This honor among criminals in the deep web is one of the most incredible things. And then, of course, where there is money and there's criminal activity, then you've got the criminals that are going to try to rip off the criminals. And there's that aspect too. The deep web is one of the craziest places. Now, before I get to a commercial here, I've got 30 seconds. One of the wildest rides about, Method just said, I want to know the downside. It is some of our brightest minds, code writers, creative net artists are there. Some of the most brilliant code is written into these websites. Being anonymous is difficult, and setting up an anonymous portal to never be found and tracked so you can do whatever you want with freedom of thought and freedom from persecution on any level, no matter how crazy the criminal activity is paramount. The creative geniuses that keep that running down there and keep it secret and keep it away from you and me unless you are invited is one of the most brilliant aspects of the deep web. And I'll have more on this either later on in the show or tomorrow. We'll get to part 3. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planets. Tonight, Paul Davids is with us live in the studio. I think he just got hit in the head listening to this deep, dark web rant. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We're going to have a great night tonight. Stay right there.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Hi, this is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Today, everybody, the Fadernauts and planet Earth is vaping. And I'm very proud to announce our very own e-juice. When we were approached by City of Angels Vapor about Fade to Black e-juice, I wanted to make sure that it was the very best and that the flavors were something that I could create myself. And we did just that. Introducing Fade to Black Fader Loops. This will take you right back to Saturday morning cartoons and your favorite bowl of Fruity Loopy cereal. Just click on the banner or go to www.coavapor.com. Enter the promo code Jimmy for the Fader Not special. That's www.coavapor.com. Go back, Lee Tappy.
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you. And your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Let TalkStream Live transform the way you listen to radio. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mobile talk radio from TalkStream Live. Now available in the iTunes App Store.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. Yes. We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And I'm Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. And you're listening to Jimmy Church. The Revolution.
Attention, all Fadernauts. Studio Dome has a special deal on their SD1 Bluetooth speaker. Just go to JimmyChurchRadio.com, click on their banner, enter the promo code Jimmy, and you get $40 off and free shipping on the SD1. It's voice activated, comes with a USB antenna, cables, and a carry bag. Never listen to your phone, tablet, or laptop speakers ever again. It's the only way to listen to Fade to Black. That's JimmyChurchRadio.com, Studio Dome banner, promo code Jimmy. Go back, Lee Tappy. All right, welcome back. This is Fade to Black. It is the Wednesday edition. Excited, fired up. It's going to be a great night. Tonight, we do have Director Paul Davids. We will take some phone calls a little bit later on, 323-825-5045. You can also Skype in Fade to Black 14. That's Fade to Black and the number 14. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. And the sandbox is hashtag F2B. Twitter is smoking tonight. And, I use TweetDeck here in the studio, and it's just like a slot machine in Vegas. It's crazy to watch it click by. So I'm trying to keep up with it, and I'll do my best. All right. If you have any questions for myself or Mr. Davids during the show, you can also hashtag F2BQ. That's Fade to Black Questions, F2BQ. All right, let's do this. Paul Davids got his first break as the production coordinator and writer of the original Transformers TV show for Marvel Productions. He co-wrote with Hollis Davids The Fires of Pele, Mark Twain's legendary lost journal, and then they co-wrote 6 Star Wars sequel novels for Lucasfilm and Bantam Books, including the award-winning Mission from Mount Yoda, plus The Glove of Darth Vader, The Lost City of the Jedi, Zorba the Hutt's Revenge, and Queen of the Empire, and Prophets of the Dark Side. He is a member of the Writers Guild of America and the Producers Guild of America. He has written and or directed The Transformers, The Sci-Fi Boys, Timothy Leary is Dead, The Life After Death Project, Before We Say Goodbye, Jesus in India, and of course, my favorite, Roswell. His current film project is Marilyn Monroe Declassified, which premieres next month on July 12th at the 2015 San Diego Jewish Film Festival. I would like to welcome to the program, for the first time, director Paul Davids. Hey, Paul, can you see me?
Hey, Jimmy, I can see your hands touching the buttons, but we got these screens blocking your face, and they're black screens, so it's very appropriate for your theme.
Well, it's probably best because, I didn't take a shower today, and I'm wearing shorts. But you know what? They don't need to know that. So I think we're good. Paul.
Yes, sir.
Silence in radio doesn't jive.
Silence is golden. Silence is golden. Silence is fading to black.
So today,
what do you want to know?
Today is a crazy day in ufology because without Kenneth Arnold and his skipping saucers description of what he saw, we wouldn't have that moniker, flying saucers. We wouldn't have that. And also it certainly kicked off a crazy wave of sightings, through the month of July, not only in Roswell, but you had Phoenix, Arizona.
You're talking about the Summer of the Saucers.
Yeah, Summer of the Saucers.
1947.
And still some of that photography too, as well, that came out of Phoenix, I thought were incredible. And they also looked similar to what Kenneth Arnold described. But I wanted to throw this back to you.
Yes.
You are when you are spoken about, and you're spoken about often. When you're spoken about, everybody does bring up Roswell, and so I do want to talk about that. And today's an important day, and it's just a coincidence that you're here. So let's kind of start there, and then I'm going to go backwards. How did you come to write the movie, and how did the idea come about? Let's start there.
Well, I had a pretty normal life, Jimmy, until February 25 in 1987, when my daughter on the second floor of our home screamed out to me. I was downstairs working. She screamed out, "Daddy, get upstairs right now. I see a flying saucer." She'd interrupted me a couple times already in the afternoon, and I'd been working, and I said to her, you know what a Goodyear blimp looks like. Take another look at it. It's probably a Goodyear blimp. And she just screamed, no, it's a flying saucer. Get up here. So I ran upstairs. She was 9. My son was 6. We all converged in a room. We looked out the window. And guess what I saw, Jimmy? It wasn't a Goodyear blimp.
Really?
No.
And where was this?
Well, my home is located sort of halfway between Pasadena and Dodger Stadium, in the hills of an old section of Los Angeles. A lot of the houses built, back in the early 1900s, mixed neighborhood.
Right.
And I'm way up on a hill. So we were able to walk out onto the roof through the window and watch as a dome disk in broad daylight descended from some rather dramatic clouds up above and basically approach us. I mean, this thing was hovering over the road in front of in front of the house, the street in front of the house, or over the neighbor's roof across the street. Classic dome disk, just like all those ones that were described in Captain Ruppelt's book on identified flying objects that talked about the Summer of the Saucers of 1947. This is what started it for me. I was a witness to something that couldn't be explained. Now, before that, this was just all science fiction for me. I loved science fiction from when I was growing up, especially the movies of George Powell, who was one of my mentors along the way. He did The Time Machine, the original War of the Worlds, When Worlds Collide, Destination Moon. And I also knew Robert Wise, who directed The Day the Earth Stood Still. And after I had the sighting, my wife actually suggested I talk to Robert Wise about it. And what I learned when I had a meeting with him was when he was making that movie, he became quite convinced of the reality of saucers. He said people came in from Washington. He said there were engineers, people, professional people were telling him that this is basically true. And he gained a great respect for it. And this just, it was like diving into the swimming pool. There I was. I spent the summer that followed that reading hundreds of UFO books. I just speed reading. I sat by a pool with a stack of books, like 10 a day, and I just went through them. I had a kind of a photographic memory while I was reading those books of all the cases and the dates and the locations and the witnesses and what the debunkers said. And I just became a sponge of ufology, and I was filled with a conviction that I had to do something to make this real for people as it was real for me. And the film Roswell evolved out of that.
Let's back up. I want to ask you more about the incident and what happened.
Yeah.
How big was this craft? And when you say the hills, so you're talking about off of the 110 freeway up in the hills?
Yeah, that's right. And the size, I don't think it was as big as a helicopter. It was, somewhere between Toyota size and helicopter size. It's a little hard to gauge because you didn't really have a reference. But it eventually swooped down over the valley in front of us and just disappeared in the blink of an eye. Again, classic dome disc, dome on top, shallower dome on bottom. It did look kind of like some of Billy Meyer's photographs, and that's not an endorsement of Billy Meyer, but just to say that it looked a little bit like the scout craft he has on the cover of one of the Genesis books. At
that time, well, first off, did it make a sound?
Silent. Absolutely no sound.
And the other thing that is right there, that when I think about that area, you have the Arroyo Seco, and you have JPL, which is right up the street from you.
Well, JPL would still be around 12 miles away. Now, of course, I considered, was this something from JPL? And in my investigation afterwards, I met one of the guys from JPL who said, look, don't call me a moon man. I'm a Mars man. He worked on the Mariner mission, and a number of people came over to the house and had me walk through and describe exactly what I saw. And in his case, he said, look, if we had something classified, I couldn't tell you. He said, but I would give you a hint. And he said, I've got no hint to give you. We don't have anything like you're describing, and I don't know what it was. Now, we didn't see any occupants. I don't know if there was an occupant or whether it was robotically controlled, but I did feel it was aware of us. And the reason I could tell, the formation of the trees around my house, there's kind of a hole, a space between the branches. And as we stood on the roof, it took a position, right in one of the spaces through the branches, so there was still eye contact with it. And dull, pewter, silver. The underside turned pitch black for, I don't know how long, maybe I'm guessing 20 seconds or so, just before it flew away. But this is around 4:30 in the afternoon in February, and it was daylight. It was as clear as a truck on the street.
And what about neighbors? Did anybody else see anything? And did you see anything in the
I looked around,
in the paper?
I looked around. I took my son with me. We drove around the neighborhood looking for witnesses, and at that time it was a heavily Hispanic neighborhood, and I didn't know how to say flying saucer in Spanish, but I did go down to the tenement house, which was sort of the closest building I saw this thing approach before it blinked out. And there was a barbed wire fence around this. It looked like a dangerous building, and a little girl came out, sort of half dressed, and I shouted out to her, is your daddy there? Could you get your daddy? I want to ask, because I figured if somebody had been looking out of the window of that tenement, they would have seen what I saw. And she turned and she said, "Daddy, there's a man here bothering me. You better get your gun." And that was the end of my investigation for that day.
Right. And nothing in the paper, nothing.
No, there wasn't. But Don Schmidt, who was then director of special investigations for the Center for UFO Studies in Chicago, the J. Allen Hynek Center. A number of months later, I met him, actually through Roy Thinnes, the star of The Invaders.
Yeah, I love that movie. Or love that series.
Robert Wise said, talk to Roy Thinnes. He didn't just play the part on television.
He believed.
He's an investigator.
Yes,
so Roy Thinnes came to my house. He called Don Schmidt. Don Schmidt came out. He did a report. He did a diagram. And in the process of it, he said, we're reinvestigating the Roswell incident. That time he was working with Captain Kevin Randall of the Air Force Reserve. And he said, we're talking to witnesses. We're going to write another book about it. We got a 17-page outline. You want to go down to Roswell with us? Do you want to meet these people? You interested in the film rights? And I said, well, the film rights for a 17-page outline on an unpublished book sounds to me like that's worth around $25. So it was the lowest cost option in history that became a multi-million-dollar television movie around 4 years later.
You optioned Roswell for $25.
Yeah, the 17-page outline that then became the book UFO Crash. Now, mind you, of course, the contract said they were going to get all this money as soon as I got a network involved.
Right.
And then they got money. At first it was HBO. For a year and a half, we developed the script with Arthur Coppett, a great playwright, terrific writer, and he did about 8 drafts of script before HBO said, we're putting this into turnaround. And in movie talk, that means find another network to do it. We're not going ahead with it.
Exactly.
And they decided not to go ahead with it. They only wanted one flying saucer movie that year. And they decided they preferred Daryl Hannah as the Attack of the 50-Foot Woman.
Wasn't a bad movie. Hey, what did Thinnes look like? That was 20 years after Invaders. The end of season 2 would have been about 20 years. How did he look?
Did
he look the same?
He's a very handsome man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And he's thin like his name. He was a wonderful friend in terms of bringing over the books he thought I should read, which included Clear Intent. Was one of the best early books I read.
Yeah.
He wanted me to read the report on unidentified flying objects by Captain Ruppelt because it described in such detail the sightings of July of 1947. And so many of those were described as just like what I saw all these years later. You see, with the JPL theory, now we have drones. Well, this thing, it wasn't a drone. I mean, it certainly didn't have any... like chopper blade kind of things. But, and its movement followed the pattern of what Ruppelt had described of so many of those saucers of 1947. When it was stationary and hovering, the little bit of a wobble, the little bit of a falling leaf motion to it.
Right.
Again, absolutely silent, very stable when moving laterally. So I thought to myself, well, if we do have anything secret like this now, I didn't think that there was anything like that in 1947. I was seeing some... Listen, Jimmy, the thing that was really intriguing, let's get to the meat of this, that the previous November, I think it was, just 10 weeks before, was the Japan Airlines flight, 1647 or something?
Out of Alaska.
Oh, out of Alaska.
Right.
Where Captain Terauchi reported seeing a cube-shaped mothership with saucers coming and going from it.
A mile across.
Well, he said 2 times the size of it. He said battleship or aircraft carrier.
Yeah, it was a crazy size.
It was large.
Yes.
And the press ended up making fun of it, saying this plane was carrying crates of wine, to Fairbanks, Alaska. But it was no joking matter. The FAA took the reports really seriously. It showed up on the radar returns until debunker Philip Klass came into the story and erased all the, then there were no more radar. He took the files and then the radar returns didn't show anything anymore. Time Magazine had an article about that. You could, for $250, you could buy the FAA package with the captain's testimony, with the diagrams, with all the stuff in this case. Now, again, my sighting on the 25th of February, 87, A couple months after that, look, if there's a big mothership on the West Coast, I did wonder, could what I saw have had anything to do with that?
Sure.
Also, my sighting was on the anniversary of the so-called Battle of Los Angeles. I think that might have been, what year was it, 42? It was February 25th.
Yeah, it was 24th, 25th. 25th, 20.
Was it 1942?
It was 1942.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
so it was an important date, just like today is an important date, as you said. But, so you want to know, how did I get into the movie Roswell? Schmidt and Randall took me down to Roswell. I heard from all the old-timers, many of whom are deceased now, but I heard from their own lips the story.
Well, how soon after the sighting for you in Pasadena in 1987, Roswell was made in 1993.
Yeah, that's when we shot it.
That's when he shot it. It was released in 94, but so there's a 6-year period there. When did you run into Don Schmidt and Kevin Randall?
Well, that was 1987, the year of the sighting.
So it took you that long to
it took years to get the movie going, because every production company, network, and studio in Hollywood turned it down twice.
Well, and also that was a pretty fascinating time for you to get involved with Roswell, because people were still alive back then.
Yes, they were people I could talk to. I could hear it from the directly. But most interesting to me, not even necessarily the people who were in Roswell, but when astronaut Gordon Cooper wanted to meet with me after the show was on Showtime.
Right.
And he told me, how accurate the movie was, that he'd known about this a long time and that we got it absolutely right. I heard it from so many people. Of course, I've heard it from Edgar Mitchell, too, and I've done enough research in the field. When you look at the letters that physicist Robert Sarbacher wrote, talking about the meetings at the Pentagon, about the recovered discs that were not from Earth and the occupants that were somewhat insect-like and could withstand G-forces and strong G-forces. And you look at, like, the writings, there was a Canadian, Wilbur Smith, who got it from top-level people at Washington that saucers, even back then, were classified at a higher level than the atomic bomb.
Right.
This is true, Jimmy. And so what have I gleaned from all of this, through all these years of knowing this is true and knowing I've never heard one true word about this subject from any government official?
Aside from Mitchell and Gordon Cooper?
Yeah, I'm talking about the government officials.
Right.
Because I have had a couple of contacts with former President Bill Clinton about this directly. He was a student of my father at Georgetown University. We'd known the Clintons for many, many years, respected him greatly. And I had opportunities that people normally wouldn't have. But the truth has never come out. So what we're living, most of us, is what I call a virtual reality. It's not the truth. It's not the real reality. But the government and the powers that be have created a virtual reality for the public to live in, which is basically an illusion based on incomplete information that people they don't feel are entitled to have.
You think it all started with Roswell?
Well, Jimmy, it's really an old phenomenon. I mean, you could see the paintings from the Middle Ages.
The phenomenon is old, but the practice of
lying
kind of started that first evening with the radio reports.
They've always lied to the public. Popes mastered this. Study the era of the Medicis in Italy, and and go back before that. Columbus was probably lied to. He was probably promised the funds for crossing the Atlantic.
And he saw a UFO too.
Yeah, he did. Yes, he saw. I think it's in the logs.
Yes, it is.
No, the point is, the world has always sort of had the royal class and the serfs. Sometimes it's serfs, sometimes it's slaves, sometimes it's lower middle class, whatever you want to call it. And those information is a commodity. Information has there is information of great value that those people of privilege withhold, that they feel that the rest of the human race has no right to. So how this thing breaks down, really, in terms of disclosure movement and all of these kinds of things, it has to do with how you feel about what the basic human right is to share in information from the privileged class.
Right, right.
You know, there's this thing in the military, if you have no need to know, they don't tell you. Things are divided up as to, if it's part of your job and you got to know it, you'll sign some papers and they tell it to you. Other than that, you're out of luck.
Well, we're up against a break, and we're going to do that in just a second. But at that point, Roswell, aside from Stanton Friedman, Roswell up to that point, really, unless you were reading Stanton's books or following this is before the internet and everything else, Roswell was something that a lot of people, most people hadn't heard of yet. Had you at that... there was no way before Don Schmidt and Kevin talked to you about it. You knew nothing about Roswell.
You know, there's nothing about it in Captain Ruppelt's book. And he's supposedly covering everything from that summer.
Yes,
it's not
nothing.
there.
No, it doesn't exist anymore.
It was explained away as a weather balloon, and that was the end of the story. And it's amazing how quickly they can make a story evaporate when they don't.
Well, and that's where the practice started, and that's what I'm saying. The determination at that point. Well, before Roswell. And the sightings that were happening around the country, and there were many, leading up to Roswell. It was like okay to talk about, and it was okay to dream that they were Martians or suspect this or that and alien beings. After Roswell, that whole story changed, not only from the Air Force, but from the mass media, newspaper reports, and they turned it into the crazy story for the crazy people. And that was the practice.
The ridicule and the debunking. And not only did the story change, but the government changed. The politics of the world as we know it changed when it was no longer, it was no longer the Army Air Force.
Right.
But now you had the Air Force, and you had the Army, and then you had the Central Intelligence Agency coming into being in 1947, that year. And we've lived under the mantle of, that kind of intelligence society ever since. Of course, I mean, it pre-existed the CIA. I mean, we won World War II, and disinformation was critical, and intelligence was absolutely critical.
That was the dress rehearsal for Roswell, was the lying and the spying and the counter-spying and the spy versus spy versus spy versus spy that went on in World War II, not only with what was going on over in Europe, but certainly with our own weapons development that was going on here with the atomic program. And somehow when people say to me, how could they keep, this UFO thing so secret? There's so many, or the Apollo hoax. How could they keep that so secret?
Jimmy, I don't agree with Apollo hoax, but you keep it secret in plain sight. You and you found a newspaper like the National Enquirer, and you plant silly stories and you ridicule.
Sure.
And this was hidden in plain sight. There were songs about UFOs, silly songs, all the way up to the Purple People Eater.
Right. Yeah, and when everybody, I was just standing and talking so we could look at each other. So I'm sitting down.
That was helpful.
But what I'm referring to is something more direct than that. We're up against a break. I've got about 30 seconds to get this thought in correctly, and then we'll pick up after the break, which is this. How can they keep something like that secret? When you look at the Manhattan Project and the 100,000, more than 100,000 people involved in that, and that believed in God and country and the fear of everything, and that's it. You kept your mouth shut, and they did. And when you look at the way that all of the covert agencies that we have today, any of the three-letter stuff that are out there, and the people that are involved in all of that believe in God and country and keeping your mouth shut. And that's it. You don't break those ranks, and that's the way that it works. If you've got to keep something secret, whistleblowers are the exception to the rule. There's only, a couple of Snowdens running around out there. There's another 100,000 people employed by the NSA that managed to not say a thing. And that's just the way that it runs.
Not even to their family members.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Unto death.
Yeah, exactly. This is Fade to Black. Tonight, Paul Davids is with us live in the studio. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, bespoke radio for the masses on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. We'll be back right after this. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRAradio.com.
Hey, everybody. What's up? Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. And check this out. The 2015 MUFON Symposium will be held this September 24th through the 27th in beautiful downtown Irvine, California. Expanding ufology, opening new doors in academia, industry, and media. Former Defense Minister of Canada Paul Hellyer will be there in person. Former CNN news anchor Cheryl Jones, TV news journalist Jaime Maussan, and MUFON's chief photo analyst Mark D'Antonio. They're just a few of the growing list of names for the 2015 event. It's September 24th through the 27th at the beautiful Hotel Irvine. Get your tickets today at MUFONsymposium.com. That's MUFONsymposium.com. Go Beckley Tepe.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Did you ever turn to your radio for your favorite talk show to find that it's been preempted for this?
In the air, to deep right center. Back goes Lewis to the wall, and it's out of here!
Or this?
And I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it.
Do you have a favorite talk radio program that's not available in your city? Just go to TalkStreamLive.com for links to the best streaming talk radio shows. At TalkStream Live, you will find live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All your favorites are here. With such a large selection, you will also discover some new favorites. On the go and still want to listen? With the mobile smartphone, simply type TalkStream Live on your internet browser. Now you can take internet radio with you. You will also find hundreds of music, news, and sports streams. Best of all, the TalkStream Live directory is free and there's never a login required. Remember TalkStreamLive.com, the fastest route between you and your favorite talk radio show.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Paul Davids is with us live in the studio. Hey, let me kill this. Paul, that guitar player that you're listening to now, 6 Degrees of Separation, man. That's the guy that wrote the Transformers theme, Transformers. And pretty trippy, huh? It's everything is synchronicity in life. It's bizarre. You can't escape it.
Absolutely. I lived the Transformers show, all of those early episodes. I was at Marvel. I was the production coordinator. And I was in the studio for all the recording sessions with Frank Welker and Peter Cullen, Megatron and Optimus Prime. And it was a very exciting time. I loved those days.
Oh, I love that show. I still do, actually. It's really good.
We worked on it hard. We took it so seriously, and the stories were good. I mean, I was, as I say, 79 episodes I was aboard for.
I went last year. I went back and went onto IMDb and went to the Transformers page and looked and clicked on cast and crew. I had no idea. There was probably 200 people listed working on that series, and I could not believe it. The animation and the special effect, the list of artists and people and writers and actors and voice. It was insane, the amount of production that went into Transformers. But you know what? It still stands today. It's a great series.
We had Orson Welles when we made the Transformers movie, the animated one, way before these live-action ones. It was Orson Welles' last performance. He was the voice of the planet Unicron.
How cool is that? Was he drunk?
He was wide.
Yeah, right.
We had trouble getting him through the aisle, but he did.
Now, I wanted to ask you. We were just talking during the break, and one of the things about you and Roswell at that time, because it just wasn't. It wasn't something that was known about. The cover-up was...
Don't forget, Jimmy, the MJ-12 papers had come out right around that time. They become available. Everyone was debating that and their reality. That had a big influence on all the thinking in ufology at that time. And, of course, Stanton Friedman has always been a very strong supporter of the validity of the information in those papers.
Right.
So that kind of gave a jump start, to what we were doing. But I felt, Jimmy, in spite of all the rejection as I went along trying to get the project launched, I felt a mission. You know the Blues Brothers, and we're on a mission from God.
Yes,
right?
yes.
I felt like I was on a mission from the UFO I saw. That it was like my responsibility now to get the word out about the Roswell case. And you could imagine how delighted I was when the Air Force came out with their mogul balloon report like 6 weeks after our movie was seen by millions of people that summer. And they said it was all not a weather balloon, but a different kind of balloon. And, well, like I say, I didn't spend a lot of time with their report because I don't have a lot of time for reading fiction.
So what was it like for me? I can't go and talk to, all of the key players there. But at that time, 1987, 88, 89, 90, 91, when you're, developing this and going to Roswell, you're meeting all of these witnesses firsthand.
Yeah, and their families, and the children of them. And, you understand the sincerity of what you're being told.
Was it scary, too, as well? In that, you're finding out something that was covered up for so many years, and you have an entire city now that you can go and start talking about it. And
but what are you scared? What is one scared of? Are you scared of the knowledge that we're not alone in the universe as intelligent creatures, or are you more scared that your government would create a complete fiction for you and keep the lie going forever at any cost? And speaking of cost, how many schools could they have built? How many hospitals, how many roads and bridges for what they've paid to keep this thing secret?
Sure. And so,
and I'm sick of it.
Yeah,
I'm gonna pull a Network on you here. Now, you remember the movie Network by
love that
Patty
movie.
Chayefsky?
Yes.
I'm mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore. He said, "Scream it out the window." So everybody who's tired of these UFO lies, go to your window now, throw it open, and scream, "I'm mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore."
Exactly.
Okay, we're not taking it anymore.
Well, no. Okay, and let's put this in reverse for a second. Going back to your sighting in Pasadena.
Yeah.
You came away from that firmly
a convert.
A convert.
Instant convert.
As in it was them and it wasn't us.
Yeah.
So now you've got that in your back pocket and you are on a mission.
Yeah.
So when you're in Roswell, you are not approaching this objectively or as a skeptic or even trying to debunk it.
No, I was a good listener. There were
Right.
people to listen to, and I took it in. And then we made a really good movie that has lived. It's stood the test of time, Jimmy. That was for Showtime. We started for HBO, and as I said, we developed it there a year and a half. Then they threw us out to have Daryl Hannah's 50-foot boobs instead, But then Showtime wanted to make this movie, and they gave us everything we needed to do it. A great budget, a fabulous cast. We had Kyle MacLachlan. We had Martin Sheen, Dwight Yoakam in one of his very early roles.
He was great in it, by the way.
Yeah, Charles Martin Smith, Xander Berkeley. It was a great cast. And Jeremy Kagan, my dear, dear old friend Jeremy, we went to American Film Institute Film School together. He was the director and the main producer, and he just did a fabulous job. I saw him last night, by the way, back at the AFI. There was kind of a reunion there, and I just admire him so much, and I was just so happy and lucky that he fell in love with the story. And you know what he fell in love with most? Not the whole, necessarily the alien aspect that we're not alone in the universe. He fell in love with the story of the military guy, Jesse Marcel, who had to keep this secret, and the burden on him, and how he had been made out to be the fall guy. As the cover-up unfolded, he was the dumb jerk who made the mistake, confusing a weather balloon with extraordinary debris. So Jeremy loved the human aspect of the story, and that's what we stuck with, and I think that's the reason this thing, maybe it's been on TV 100 times by now. I don't know.
Okay, I got a couple of questions about the movie itself. What was real? What got changed? What you were happy with? And a couple of myths and legends and stuff. Okay, so the party at the beginning, the reunion thing.
Yeah,
was that real, or was that artistic liberty?
Yeah, there was no reunion that I know of. That was the structure we chose to let the story unfold by bringing Marcel back together with all of these guys from the base, each one who knew a little part of the story. That's one of the things that we discovered in talking to all the witnesses. Different people knew different stuff. Some people knew about what debris was found at the debris field. Other people talked about bodies. Other people talked about the extent of the cover-up. Other people talked about secret flight to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and Andrews Air Force Base in Washington. So everybody knew a little piece, but it was all compartmentalized. And we wanted a movie that showed that fragmentation and the struggle of a guy at the center of it who knew part of the mystery himself but not the whole story, trying to put the rest of the pieces together. So we were putting the pieces together as an audience and as filmmakers, and it becomes quite a mystery.
And who you had Glenn Dennis, right? He was alive.
Yes.
And
Walter Hout.
Walter had to be instrumental too, as well. Let's stop at Walter for a second.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier. I need to set this up correctly because
Okay.
I've been very outspoken about this over the years.
Okay.
When it comes to Walter, he was doing his job. I understand that. I totally get that. And if Walter was told, how to release this information, when to release it, who to release it to, let's get this out there, let's do this, boom, he does his job and he gets it out.
Yeah.
How close do you think we were to Walter not releasing that? Because they backpedaled very quickly a day later. And if we wouldn't have had those original radio announcements and the original stories that were released, front page newspaper articles, how close were we to not even having that? Because if we didn't have that, then there probably would be no Roswell story today.
Well, you had these original leaks, and I think at least the authors that I've worked with on this case think that what Walter was ordered to do in putting out the press release saying that the Army Air Force had recovered a flying disc was a setup for knocking the story down. In other words, you want to kill this thing, put it out, and then say that it was a mistake. And that's essentially what they did. Very quickly, within 24 hours, General Roger Ramey in Dallas, the 8th Air Force head, General Ramey was talking about booze and its influence on people that see saucers.
Right.
And, they don't report flying saucers in Kansas because it's a dry state. That's what we were getting in 24 hours of this. But
well, the reason why I don't think that theory holds water is, as much as I would like to think that Ramey and the rest of those guys were the Keystone Cops and falling over each other.
They weren't, though. No, it was all very deliberate.
Well, they would be if that was their plan. That's what I'm trying to say, because that's just a bad idea.
Yeah.
No, I'm staunch in this. That release that Walter did was word for word exactly what happened, and that was the release. They knew exactly what they were writing to get that release out, and the facts were there. It was checked. It was double-checked. That's the way the military works. Before it got to Walter, it was approved a few times, and then he was just doing his job. After he released it, that's when they realized that they probably reacted too quickly, and they were being too honest, and they needed to cover this up. And then they brought in the ridiculous story about the weather balloons. I really believe that is exactly how it went down.
Well, they apparently they already had bodies at that point. Now I've heard from directly from one witness who saw the bodies at that time, was in the military there in Roswell in 1947, and described it. And we've also had statements about it that Randall and Schmidt collected, sometimes in taped telephone conversations from others who were in the military and involved. For example, the head of the military police, who referred to, oh, you mean the creatures, in one of his conversations. There were bodies, and Walter Haut did write a statement that was to be opened only after his death. It was under seal until then. That said that there were bodies.
No,
they weren't human, and that he had seen this. But this was one aspect of the story he never talked about when he was alive. We've heard it from a lot of people. So the point is, look, I think there gets to be a point where we should be able to get beyond the debate and the pollution, I would say, the pollution of disinformation that has infiltrated this story from beginning to end, and get to the point of just accepting that this was a turning point in American history. It was an absolutely defining moment, as definitive as, let's say, the assassination of President Lincoln. And we're out of touch with our own history because it was concealed from us. As so many other things have been concealed from us. We lived through the assassination of John F. Kennedy. We lived through the Warren report. We lived, we're used to it by now. We expect to be lied to, and who can trust any of it anymore?
Well, the Roswell has been discussed, over-discussed, and talked about more than just anything else in ufology. And certainly when Roswell was first brought about in the early 90s, when it started to hit the mainstream, I went back and listened to old radio shows a couple of years ago. I'm not going to say who, what, when, or where, but old radio show and I'm listening to hosts that really didn't know anything about Roswell, and they're talking to these, different people that were involved in it. It doesn't matter. The point is, it was a very fresh subject in the 90s, and it's as shocking as it is. Nobody knew a whole lot about Roswell. Today, it's a different story. And which brings me to my point.
Wait, let me interrupt you just to say, what the best story is for me right now? That not only former President Clinton goes on the Jimmy Kimmel show to talk about UFOs, but It's followed by an appearance by the sitting president, Barack Obama, with Jimmy Kimmel asking the same questions. And as Jimmy pressed, the president at first, he sort of dealt with these questions with humor. He sort of laughing matter and tried to make a joke out of it. But as Jimmy pressed, the final thing that the president said about this was, I can't reveal that. And I put a stutter into that because it's there. You listen to it 4 times. He says, I can't reveal that.
They won't let me. Yeah.
It's the first time I know of in history that a president has admitted that there is something to be revealed that isn't being revealed. Because throughout the history of our lifetimes, they've just said, look, there's nothing there.
Right.
It's been debunked so massively. So, we just have to live with it. We have to live with a lot of knowledge, and this is your underground knowledge. This is, it does sort of permeate the web, and it's hard to sort the fact from the fiction, and it's a different kind of deep web.
But that's, yeah, and that's exactly where I was going with this, which is after so many years, after everything is said and done, then both Congress and the GAO investigations into Roswell, and the release of the first report that you referred to earlier about the crash dummies, and then in those very reports, they actually want to say that in the instance of the GAO, that the General Accounting Office couldn't find anything on Roswell anywhere. It doesn't exist. Well, that's a bunch of crap.
Well, they said it did exist. They said the outgoing messages from the base at that time, which would have told the whole story, had been destroyed by persons unknown with authorization unknown. So when former President Clinton was asked by Jimmy Kimmel about Roswell, and President Clinton said, I knew we'd get a zillion questions about this on the anniversary of the Roswell incident, so I had all the Roswell papers looked into. Well, no. No.
Right.
Because they've been destroyed by persons unknown, by authorization unknown. No.
Yeah, and where I'm going with this is the GAO said that they look for everything for the information on the flights from Fort Worth to Cincinnati didn't exist. There was no accounting of there was no paperwork trail for this. There was nothing here. There was nothing there. We have looked at everything that should have been there.
Dayton, I think it's Dayton, isn't it?
Yeah,
Dayton, Ohio, not Cincinnati.
It's the same city. Same city. Anyway, that none of it existed. And if you go back and look at how the Army treated it in July of 1947 and the way that article was written, the photographs that are in the paper and Ramey and Jesse Marcel sitting there with the crash debris, obviously there is a lot known about this, and there was a lot of attention paid to it, and there's a lot of information out there. And for them to come out and lie about it again so many years later just says, look, if you're going to lie to us and say it doesn't exist, we're going to continue to write our own story. The facts that we have are the eyewitnesses. The facts that we have, and I've said this many times, if I was in court, Paul, if I was in court and had one piece of evidence to present on all of this, you know what I'm going to whip out? I'm not whipping out eyewitness testimony. I'm not whipping out photographs. I'm not whipping out videotape, radar data, pilot eyewitness. I'm not taking any of that to court. I'm taking the front page article that says the Army's press release says we've retrieved a flying saucer. That is their own writing, their own words. So there is a paper trail, and you're lying to us about it. You are.
Now,
that's the frustrating part.
Jimmy, one of the things we should talk about philosophically, because we use the word lie, we're throwing it around here a lot. Right. But in the real world, it's not a lie when you are telling a story to smokescreen information that powerful people feel should not be publicly available. It's not a lie. It's just a story. It's a cover story. It's a cover story, and the cover story is what the public is left with. And, you know, sometimes somebody enterprising, like you and others who've researched this case, you know, spend years trying to penetrate the lie and write books about it and or penetrate the cover story. And the truth kind of comes out. But it never has the full impact on everyone because society just sort of putters along under the illusions that were offered, you know? I mean, at a certain level, we're all children clinging to, what should I say, you know, sort of beliefs like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny are for children. We have our own sets of those things, you know, Lee Harvey Oswald assassinated President Kennedy, shooting alone from the school book depository, da-da-da-da-da, blah, blah, blah. You know, I mean, it didn't happen that way.
Well, but it's still a lie. The definition is the same.
Yeah, they have a different definition for lie.
Yeah.
It's like with this. Take the fairy tale, The Emperor's New Clothes, right? The emperor is walking around spot naked, right? And no one will admit that. They're all twittering about what gorgeous robes the emperor has, and one child speaks up and says, "But you know, the emperor is naked." And everyone's reaction is, shh, you know, you can't say that. So the delusion or illusion that the emperor has clothes is what we're expected to live with. And the media, you know, the networks don't help us penetrate that much anymore. Things are very, very tightly controlled. I ran into this with my new movie about Marilyn Monroe greatly, you know, because so much of what's been put out there is such a whitewash and avoids the really big issue in her life, which was that after she married playwright Arthur Miller, a Jewish, left-leaning, pro-communist, great author of Death of a Salesman and many other plays, but she attracted, they both did, the attention of the FBI and the CIA, and wiretapped and bugged and monitored, and you know, spies following them to Mexico, reporting on every detail in their lives because, God forbid, they should release anything that a KGB agent might hear. So, you know, the movies about Marilyn, they don't deal with this reality. There was just this Lifetime show about Marilyn Monroe where, you know, Susan Sarandon had this very large part in this as Marilyn Monroe's mother, who was institutionalized, and really played a very, very small part in Marilyn's life after she was institutionalized. She was mentally ill. But Susan Sarandon needed a big part, so they rewrote Marilyn's life and had her mother kind of involved in everything. And, you know, never did they mention the fact that she was wiretapped and being pried, you know, being followed, her life being followed step by step by the FBI. But we know all of this now because of the Freedom of Information Act. Thank you. Thank you for the Freedom of Information Act. After 25 years, most secret documents are declassified unless an agency of government deems that it's still of import to national security. It'll be declassified. And we know so much about Marilyn's life and her death now that could not be known before. That's why I call my new movie Marilyn Monroe Declassified. It's like, what have we learned about Marilyn Monroe from declassified FBI documents, CIA documentation? And it's a different story, and I'm telling it now, you know, for the first time. And it'll be interesting to see who picks it up, how it gets out there, and who it's too hot for.
Well, before we take this a step further, I'm watching Twitter here. I'm sitting here with my feet kicked up, and I'm all relaxed. I'm leaning back, and I'm watching Twitter roll by, and it says, Dayton and Cincinnati are not the same city. They are some distance apart. Well, you know what?
Same state.
They're
Ohio.
I grew up there, and so before you go and even say anything like that, I know exactly what I'm talking about. And so when you live in that area, you don't think of Dayton. You think of Wright-Patterson, certainly, but you know, you think Cincinnati. I was just there a couple of months ago for my brother's wedding, and driving, which was in Cincinnati, and we're driving over to Columbus after the wedding, and we drive by Wright-Patterson, and we drive under the bridge it's covered with I think it's one giant American flag or one big one, and I'm driving through there, and you know what's funny? I'm going to Columbus. You know, this is where my family lives, and it's all good, right? And as much as I wanted to think about my brother's wedding, I'm here in Cincinnati. I can go to Steak and Shake, and I can, you know, eat all of my favorite foods, and it's all good in Middle America, and I'm, you know, it's my family, and everything's cool. You know what I thought about? I thought about UFOs, man. I thought, man, we're driving right through the belly of the beast. You know, as we went under that bridge, and my dad turns and looks at me. I'm in the front seat. And I'm just spacing out, looking out the window. And I felt him look at me. Then he drives, and he looks at me a second time, and he goes, dude, what are you thinking about? And I go, oh, you could tell? And he goes, man, you're off into space. I said, yeah, totally, man. Thinking about UFOs. Oh, man, just stop. It's just really funny. But that's what I equate with Cincinnati is Wright-Patterson and Dayton and ETs and Roswell and Hangar 18.
Jimmy, I can tell you a funny story about that takes us right to the Wright-Patterson question. At a UFO conference a couple of years ago, an Air Force guy was there who was very involved in the Air Force Marathon. I guess they hold it every year in September. He said the marathon's, going to be... My mic is just...
Okay, you just...
I stepped on something.
Hold on. Oh, man. What did you do?
I just got censored.
Okay.
Did I step on something?
Right.
What happened?
Yeah, man. And you're redoing it. Okay. Now we're back.
Am I back?
Well, I don't think audio ever left. Just so you know, he disconnected our headphones and we couldn't hear each other.
You sure it wasn't a Man in Black?
No, which means everybody was hearing the crash, bang, boom. That was kind of funny. So
it came at a critical time. So here's the story. Air Force Marathon, he said, you've got the prop of the alien that was alive in your movie. That sounds kind of cool. He said, would you be interested in bringing it to, Wright-Patterson for maybe we just put it in the hotel. We don't put it on the base, but, it would be great for photo opportunities for Air Force families who are participating in the marathon. Okay. And I said, well, sounds like a great idea. I love that idea. And I'm already thinking in my mind about the documentary I'm going to make when I put the alien in my car and drive it, halfway across the country.
Yeah, this is a great story.
That I'm bringing the alien back to pay homage to his deceased brothers who are there hidden away somewhere at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Sure.
So I've already got the documentary going in my mind. And I said, well, look, if we're going to do that, and they were going to give me a contract and everything I said, if we're going to do that, we got to show the movie Roswell, at Wright-Patterson as part of this, celebration of this thing. This thing got run up the Air Force flagpole. And I want to tell you how forcefully it was shot down. And, there was a public affairs official involved, and it went to a very high level. They said, absolutely not.
Really?
Is he crazy? We're not going to show that movie here. That movie contradicts an official Air Force report. We're not going to. So I said, well, then the alien's going to stay home.
Well, what are they saying? Or is it? Wait. Is it blocked when it's played on Showtime?
No.
It goes in. They can watch it then, right?
Yeah,
you can rent it at the Netflix. You can get it from Redbox.
Most people who work at the base have probably seen it. Is the point? But
you could buy it at the base PX. You could probably go into the DVD section and buy a copy of it.
Yeah, but the head of Air Force Public Relations, you see, doesn't think that way. Just think, we're going to promote something that fosters, this idea that the alien... So here's what I tried to convince them of. I said, look, you say it's just a myth, right? I said, but it's a very pervasive American myth that you could have fun with. We can laugh. I said, Paul Bunyan and the Big Blue Ox, Babe, is a myth, So if this is just a myth, why can't you show the movie and laugh at it and enjoy it? As what a silly story that's become so. No, oh my God,
really
is he crazy? Is he crazy? No, I'm not open for discussion. Not to be shown at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
That's interesting. And what happened with the dummy?
And they were promising me a tour of the base and everything. Well, the dummy is in my home office.
No,
I live with him.
Did you take the dummy to Wright-Patterson? Did the
No, I refused.
Oh, the whole thing.
I said no movie, no. I said no movie, no. The alien doesn't budge.
Oh man, and. I don't know how we got back onto Roswell.
Yeah, well, it's because you were talking about Dayton, Ohio.
Oh, yeah, Cincinnati.
Because I was talking about Marilyn Monroe and the conspiracy of. Listen, my new movie, Marilyn Monroe Declassified, is not available to the public yet. We're just launching it. And the first public showing is going to be July 12th in La Jolla, California, near San Diego, sponsored by the San Diego Jewish Film Festival. And I'm sure you're asking yourself, why the Jewish Film Festival? Well, how many people know that Marilyn Monroe converted to Judaism?
Yeah, it's she did it before she married Arthur Miller.
Yes,
right?
She became a Jew, and that so that they would be a Jewish couple, and there's a conversion paper, signed. You can find it online. So the Jewish community is very interested in Marilyn Monroe and embraces her as one of their own.
Did they bury her in a Jewish cemetery?
No. But the Westwood Memorial Cemetery, they do have a chapel there, but it's very non-sectarian. It really is.
Okay.
And, entertainers, public personalities of various religions and persuasions are interred there.
Okay, so one of the things that I have always found interesting, not only is her connection with UFOs and JFK, of course, but the amount of documents that are available, and I've talked about them on the show. When you look at these, as opposed to other alleged documents that are floating around out there. When you look at the Maryland stuff, wiretapping UFOs, we've got a problem here. We got to deal with this. We've got to monitor this woman. Those look authentic to me. I look at those and they just feel real. I don't question.
Well, most of them have been released by the FBI.
And that's what I'm saying.
And as for the most direct CIA document that deals with wiretaps, where she's discussing what she heard from President Kennedy about his visit to a secret air base for the purpose of seeing these unusual things from outer space. In regard to that document, it was the subject of a Freedom of Information Act application by a man named Don Burleson, who lives in Roswell. He's a math professor, actually. He wrote a book about this. Because the document refers to wiretaps. And he said, well, there were wiretaps. There must be transcripts of the wiretap. So he applied under the Freedom of Information Act for those transcripts. And he got back a notification that they could find nothing responsive to his request, but that if he wanted to appeal, he could appeal. So he went through all the paperwork to file the appeal, and they accepted the appeal. And the point that Don made that's very, very well taken is that the CIA does not accept an appeal based on a document that would be considered fraudulent. So it was a de facto acceptance and recognition of the legitimacy of the document, which is signed by James Angleton, by the way, who was then chief of counterintelligence for the CIA. His story, there's been volumes written about it. It's absolutely incredible, the story of James Angleton and his influence at the CIA for so many decades. But in other cases, agencies of government have kicked back documents and written bogus on it. In fact, they did that, the FBI, with the MJ-12 document when there were appeals attempted. Said, this is a fake. We don't accept this as real. No further discussion. But with the Marilyn Monroe CIA document, which was released into the public under unusual circumstances to begin with. They did accept the appeal, and we're sure that the document is real. Very hard to find a signature by James Angleton. Well, and we have one we know is real, and it's his signature.
Well, let me ask you: was the reason to keep their eye on and monitor Marilyn, was it because she was just sleeping with so many people that she had the possibility of maybe disclosing or discussing something with somebody else that she may be sleeping with in the future or at the current time?
Well, sort of. I mean, the facts are that Peter Lawford's house was being wiretapped because the president went there frequently. It was his party house, on the West Coast when he came to Los Angeles. Peter Lawford was married to President Kennedy's sister. So there were enemies of the Kennedys who were trying to develop negative dossiers on them. And chief among that was Jimmy Hoffa, head of the Teamsters, Sam Giancana, who was head of the Chicago syndicate mafia outfit, as they say. They were monitoring the conversations that were happening in Peter Lawford's house. And along comes Marilyn Monroe, and they discover that she's having a relationship with the president. And then the question is, what is he telling her? Well, we know a lot about this. This is all in my film. It's explored in some detail. Bernard Spindell was the champion wiretapper at that time, working with a private detective named Fred Otash, who has testified about the wiretapping that they did and what they learned from it. And these wiretaps were eventually confiscated by a DA in New York, wiretaps taping that could have answered questions about exactly what happened on the day of Marilyn Monroe's death, but they were confiscated by authorities. Bernard Spindell was thrown into prison for illegal wiretapping. He died in prison. And just like those Roswell outgoing messages from the base were destroyed by persons unknown, in this case, although those wiretap tapes were, lost by.
Oh no, they're still around. The story is that they're destroyed, but
they could have been destroyed. There would have been a strong motivation to destroy them, destroy the evidence entirely, because the whole story involving her death at age 36 is very, very dismaying and tragic, and I do not believe that she committed suicide by swallowing pills, and there's a lot of evidence to the contrary. I think people should know what that is. I made a movie.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that, but I kind of want to stay on point here because Marilyn is much loved. I mean, by all of us. Okay, so I get that, and her legacy is there. The legend is there. She's legendary too, as well.
She's become an immortal icon,
right? And so when we look at that, but we have to kind of pull this out of context a little bit, and look at why would the FBI and the CIA be so interested in her unless, and to me, I kind of strip this down into its no pun intended, into its more basic form, in that she was fooling around and sleeping with and associated with very important people at a very important time in our history.
Yeah.
And so
the timing is critical in all of this. So the Bay of Pigs, and then Kennedy's assassination folled her death by about a year.
And they must have had some information that she was talking.
Well, now I don't. Well,
and that's why.
Yeah. I mean, well, she had been talked to.
Well, and what about the rumor about her possibly even the
press conference?
No, Fidel Castro.
Right. Well, she had been told that that the U.S. government was attempting to assassinate him. This has been all declassified. People knew this. I don't know how many years later, but within 10, 15 years of her death, this was common knowledge. the CIA, in fact, enlisted the mafia as the hit squad that was charged with and failed at its attempted elimination of Fidel Castro. But the CIA at that time in history is documented, was in business with the mafia, because that it gives you an arm's length, organization that can take care of some very dirty business for you. You're the one that was talking about hitmen earlier in the show.
Totally.
Right? So it goes back to that Ghostbusters movie and that song, who you going to call? Who are you going to call? In this case, they kept calling Sam Giancana, the head of the Chicago mob, who helped deliver the state of Illinois in Kennedy's column for him to beat out Richard Nixon and get the presidency. So the mafia helped put Kennedy in the White House. Joseph Kennedy, whose dealings with them goes back to the Prohibition days, appealed to them. This is all documented in books. He appealed to them that they'd be much better off with Kennedy's in the White House than Nixon. But what happened? Bobby Kennedy got appointed Attorney General, and he made it his personal mission in life to put away all those mob leaders.
Did she ever meet Fidel?
No, absolutely not.
She never spoke to her?
No. This is all just utter garbage. There have been totally false stories put out on the internet, and one thing about her sleeping with Fidel Castro.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just absolutely. Am I allowed to say?
Well, no,
the
you're
BS
not.
word.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the point.
We don't go there, but
here's the point. That it was labeled as a fake news story when it came out. People just read the fine print a little bit. It's like one of those Globe stories, completely made up. The name given for the CIA agent involved in that story, it doesn't exist. It's all just a complete fabrication. But look at the purpose it serves. Look at what a smokescreen it is. Because when the real information resembles that, people who've read that story, their thinking about it has already been tainted and confused by utter garbage.
Well, you have to go, and when you read stories like that, Paul, I maybe this is just the way that my polluted mind works now.
Jimmy,
but
look,
no, hold on. Let me finish.
Yeah.
Is the CIA owns so many websites, and it puts out so much disinformation out there that when I read a story like that involves Marilyn Monroe sleeping with Fidel Castro, and I know that it's probably utterly fictitious from top to bottom, then but I think, well, who wrote this? And why is it being put out there? And it is written in such a way that it's going to fool some people. And then it gets legs from there, and it starts the rumor, and then it turns into its own story. And the next thing you know, the damn thing turns out to be true. And that's what I'm saying. I look at all of this stuff in 3D.
Yeah.
I don't know. When I go to a website these days, I swear, there are so many UFO websites out there, and there are guys listening to this show right now that hate my guts, and I get that, that are running websites and doing their thing out there. And I go to those sites, and I don't know when I go to these sites what's real and what's not. And so
that's the way they want it.
That's what I'm trying to say. And so consequently, and especially over the last, I'm gonna say this pretty firmly, since before this show, the last 3-4 years, maybe 5 years, I don't go to those websites.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go to the big ones. I don't go to the small ones. I just don't go. I don't trust it. I don't. I would rather go to some mass media website than somewhere else, unless I know exactly who's writing it, and that they're, I have an association with them, because it's the smoke. What was Operation Mockingbird?
Jimmy, there's one site there. Oh, what I was going to call your attention to is you know the history of the tabloids in this country.
Sure.
And the original ownership by the CIA. Look at how useful they were for this information.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to say any researcher can be a victim of this, and I myself have been. For example, when we made the movie Roswell, I had a little part in it where I'm the photographer in the autopsy room taking a picture of one of the aliens, turns out to be alive. And there were some publicity photos of me with some of these corpses that we'd been created by the company XFX, Steve Johnson's company, special effects company. So there were these photos of me with these aliens, and somebody puts together like a 2-minute video online saying, here's the real Roswell alien. It's a picture of me, standing over the movie prop, and I'm in the uniform, because it's the movie from 1947, and it's saying, we got to find out who this Roswell military officer was.
I remember all of this.
Do you remember this?
Oh, yes.
And there were like 1,000 comments about this thing.
Yeah,
with
I
people
totally forgot
duped by
about
it.
that. Yeah,
and then I write to the website. I say, look, I do believe that aliens were recovered at Roswell, but these aren't them. Look, I produced this movie. Those are props from our movie. Here's the people that made them. And don't be duped by this. Look for the real information, because it still does exist somewhere. And you know what happened as a result of my writing that? People writing onto the website saying, that's not the real Paul Davids.
Yeah, right.
Somebody said, I emailed the real Paul Davids, and he told me he never wrote that. Just lie. You want to talk about lies? How do you defend yourself against this kind of,
You can't. Well, check this out. This is a little funny little thing that happened before the show tonight. So Paul gets here to the studio, and we're talking. And this, I don't know what came up, but the point is, Paul turns to me and he goes, well, Church isn't your real name, right? And neither is Jimmy, right? And I was like, no, it's no. He goes, no, that's Paul. It's my real name, but that's not what the web says. Did you not say those exact words to me?
Those were my exact words.
That's not what the web says. So I turn around and I whip out my original. I just happen to have it here in the studio. It was just so funny from the show the other night. My original 1963 baptism paper. And I take it out and I show it to you. And there it is. There's my name, James Anthony Church. It's right there for God and everybody to see. But that's what the web does. I know exactly what you're talking about. I have been identified as this went around forever. This is why I refuse to read crap.
Identified as a CIA agent?
Yes, man. And the fade to black was a hidden message in fade to black. Somebody had sent me a link.
Yeah, because it's short for it's FIB, fib.
Yes. and so maybe about a year ago, I get somebody sends me this email, dude, man, you got to see this, man. Is this real? Is this true? And I click on it, and I go to and I'm looking at this forum of pages and pages discussing fade to black and its implications and why it's a disinfo name and what it really means, and it's the end of everything, and I'm a disinfo guy, and I'm reading, and they don't even get it. If they only knew, walked in my shoes for one day and found out that fade to black came from, it's a joke inside of our family here. It's a great name for the show. But fade to black, I'll set the record straight right now. Years ago, 20 years ago, I made an industrial film for a corporation on demoing some of their products, okay? And I was I'm the talent, instructing how to use this electronic equipment. And at the end of the video, I literally say, I was tired too. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. I've been shooting for 20 straight hours. And I said, that's it, fade to black. Right? Well, the running joke in the family around here, my wife would look at me and go, fade to black, fade to black. It was the joke. Fade to black, fade to black, fade to black. And that went on and when we went to name the show, Rita said, fade to black. Mm-hmm. And her and I knew the inside joke, but it's a great name for the show. But for us, and it's a great name for the show, but for us, it was this little inside joke between us. Now it's no longer just between us, But that's where it comes from. And the whole disinfo crowd out there, the big conspiracy theorists, are like, this came down from the CIA, the NSA. It's their name. And this is out here too. It's crazy. And that's why I really don't want to disappoint all the people that are writing crap out there on the internet, and that, they think that myself and other people are going and reading that stuff, that, the people that matter, that they're writing about. They don't. We don't. I certainly don't. And I find it funny. And in a weird way, the attempt at being offensive and offending, it doesn't really work, because it's not falling on my ears or the other people's ears where it matters, like yours. The whole disinfo thing out there about you and that alien and the movie that was out about that, I totally remember it. And there are people out there that are literally going to say about your video, once you come out and say that it's really you in there, well, then that's the disinfo. See, it's really him, and they're doing it to deflect, and they're showing this fake alien because there's real aliens. But what they don't realize is it's just you. It just may be you with a prop.
Yeah.
It just might be that.
Jimmy, this is the second incident like this that I can name. Many years ago, Bob Guccione, who published Penthouse, had an issue of Penthouse, which usually has, a sexy lady as a centerfold. And they had world's first alien centerfold, real alien. Yeah. And I opened the centerfold, and I saw immediately that this was one of the props from our movie that I had donated to the Roswell UFO Museum.
Right.
And so I wanted to call Bob Guccione out on that. You see, and my reason for this is because I know the Roswell incident is real, and I know this really was part of history and it happened, and I know it from very, very important people as well as witnesses that were there. I value the truth about this and the real information, and the rest of this stuff is just clutter. My motivation is, let's get the real thing declassified and really get it exposed. Well, let's see it finally at long last. But with Bob Guccione, I went on a radio show where I said, Bob, this is not what you say it is. It's not no. I got it from an agent, who I've been through due diligence on this. I'm absolutely sure. He said, I've heard it on good authority that you were shown these pictures before you built your prop. And that you built your prop to look like the real thing.
Oh,
right?
My. Yeah.
Well, this was a made-up story. He had to defend, himself, because his magazine was on all these newsstands across the country. But this is the kind of thing that happens and makes it so easy for the disinformation specialists to do their job.
When you, and speaking about that, and then when we come back after the break, I want to talk some more about Marilyn. I'm totally fascinated about it. And Danny Sheen and I were talking about this last night. It's just ironic that you're here now. That's the best definition of irony right there. But back to Roswell. Did you have... we've got 2 minutes. If you turn around and look, that's an atomic studio clock. You see that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so at 9 o'clock, we go to commercial. So we have exactly 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Okay. The question is this. While you were making the film, were you run with any government interference? Did you have anybody appear on the set that you couldn't identify?
They made it really clear to us that we were all being watched. Not that anybody interfered or tried to make it difficult for us to do our job. In fact, we kind of had the feeling that they wanted this to happen. It was a great setup for their Pentagon report that came out 6 weeks later,
right,
saying none of it really happened.
Right.
But there was clicking on the phone lines. There were people showing up and trying to provide us with information that these people were very, very, transparent, that they were...
Could you see anybody on the set? Did you?
Oh, people did visit the set, and it was kind of obvious. It was, there were circumstances where people would flash pictures of us and mysterious ways and vanish in a car. And
say what? Wait. What?
Yeah, I was in a car with Don Schmidt, and the car pulls up alongside us and then pulls right in front of us, and they're snapping flash pictures, and it wasn't because they thought we were celebrities. It's just like a message. Like, also during that time, some of our phone conversations would be disconnected right when we were talking about the alien bodies. You know, that's when it would happen enough times. We talk about, where are the bodies? And you mentioned the bodies, and it was a sure thing that your phone was going to get disconnected. I gotta say, after the movie came out, after the Pentagon report, things died down, and that all stopped.
Interesting.
And they didn't have any more interest anymore. They'd done what they needed to do, and then I don't think.
Yeah, Don told me that story. Let's head to a break. Let's get this in. Don told me that story. I didn't know it was you.
Yeah, I was in.
Yeah, and he told me that story when I asked him, what was your freakiest encounter with the Men in Black?
Yeah.
And that was the story that he told me. And he said he was very uncomfortable.
He was.
All right, we're live in the studio with Paul Davids. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. We'll be right back.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
Are you a paranormal investigator, ghost hunter, or UFO skywatcher? If so, FNGinnovations.com has the product you definitely need in your investigations kit or go bag. Introducing the Morpholite Wide Beam Tactical Flashlights that put the light where you need it most. Traditional flashlights shine a focused round beam with limited line of sight in the dark. Morpholite Tactical Flashlights change all that, utilizing a revolutionary wide beam design to enable you to see safety hazards such as hanging wires and steel, pipes, and holes in the floor you just can't see with a focused round beam. In the field, where safety is paramount, a 180-degree beam increases orientation and peripheral vision in the dark. Morpholite flashlights are ideal for investigations in abandoned facilities such as houses and hospitals, factories, caves, and tunnels. Avoid those low-hanging tree branches that poke your eyes in the woods. Visit FNGinnovations.com to see a full line of tactical lights and accessories. That's FNGinnovations.com.
Now you can find all your favorite talk radio shows live, all in one place at TalkStreamLive.com. Listen from anywhere, office, home, or in your car. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com and click on one of the many live talk show hosts you want to listen to. It's free and easy. No computer? Download the smartphone apps. Never miss your favorite talk show. Find them all at TalkStreamLive.com.
Hey everybody, what's up? Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and check this out. The 2015 MUFON Symposium will be held this September 24th through the 27th in beautiful downtown Irvine, California. Expanding ufology, opening new doors in academia, industry, and media. Former Defense Minister of Canada Paul Hellyer will be there in person. Former CNN news anchor Cheryl Jones, TV news journalist Jaime Maussan, and MUFON's chief photo analyst, Mark D'Antonio. They're just a few of the growing list of names for the 2015 event. It's September 24th through the 27th at the beautiful Hotel Irvine. Get your tickets today at MUFONSymposium.com. That's MUFONSymposium.com. Go Beckley Teppy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why fade to black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
All right, everybody, welcome back. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Oh, we are live from downtown Burbank, California, in the bunker, live with Paul Davids in the studio. A couple of things really quick. Paul has literally just left the studio to visit the little boy's room. He'll be back here in a second. I wanted to go back and comment on a couple of things that was happening in Twitter. And what was this? But the real question is, do they have inside info on the new Star Wars movie? And when Paul comes back, I actually wanted to ask him about the new X-Files and discuss that. And one of the things that is going to be coming up here in September, there is going to be another convention at the LAX Hilton, and put on by Paul Andrews, and it's going to be dealing with life after death. And I talk about that all the time on this show, and with various guests that do come on. And one of Paul's last project that he just completed before Marilyn Monroe Declassified was the Life After Death project. And Paul just got back in the studio. Paul, is that that's a two-parter, part one and part two?
Yes, two full-length feature documentaries in one DVD package. The first one was on the Sci-Fi Channel, and then I created a sequel. And there's probably going to be another sequel because the adventure has continued. It's a very personal story for me.
Well, okay, let's talk about it for a second. How's it set up? When you say documentary, I'm holding it in my hand here too as well. When you say documentary, so you have people that have died?
Well, this came about not because of an interest on my part in near-death experience or a lot of the things that people normally associate with this question. I was a great friend of a man named Forrest J. Ackerman. We all called him Uncle Fari. He was a godfather of science fiction. He came up with the term sci-fi and was one of the early promoters of science fiction in this country, a mentor to people like Ray Bradbury. He was born in 1916, so if he had lived, he'd be coming up on a century. In fact, he died when he was 92. He died in 2008. And Fari was noted as being an atheist and a skeptic, and he didn't believe in anything paranormal, didn't believe in UFOs. He promoted these things as fiction, but it wasn't real for him. But he conceded before he passed away when he was getting very old. He told me, and he told a few other friends, he said, look, if it turns out I'm wrong, and I pass away and I wake up to some great sci-fi convention in the sky, he said, after the partying dies down, and after my reunions with actors like Boris Karloff and Peter Lorre and Bela Lugosi and my dear wife Wendane, he said, maybe I'll drop you a line if I can. So we all took it as a joke, and I think he probably half meant it as a joke. But it wasn't a joke in March of 2009 when I got dropped a line and other people got dropped a line. I don't say this lightly. I didn't come to the conclusion quickly or easily that my late mentor, Fari, dearly beloved mentor, was coming through to me. But things happened that left physical evidence behind under impossible circumstances. And I took it as a research project. I took the evidence to the chemistry department of Indiana University, the chairman of the chemistry department. And then he got a top chemist involved, one of his colleagues from the College of New Jersey. And they studied the ink, I call it the ink blot or ink obliteration message that appeared on a document. They studied it for 3 years and concluded that it's a mystery that their science cannot explain.
Okay. I understand you know what it is. But describe exactly what this was.
What happened was that the weekend of the great tribute for Fari at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood. There were two Canadian filmmakers there who had made a movie about him. I had made a movie that was partially about him called The Sci-Fi Boys. Easy for you to find out there, about the history of special effects in movies and science fiction. These two filmmakers, Ian Paul Johnson and Mike McDonald, described to us all that they had gone to Fari's crypt and they had rapped on it in a playful way and said, "Hi, Uncle Fari, you there? It's us." And within an hour of rapping on his crypt, he rapped back for them. They had an extraordinary series of quick messages from him in which the name Ackerman kept showing up on their computer, and one of the computers was talking to them. They were sharing a room in a hostel, computers side by side, and they were both doing things that related to Ackerman an hour later. I heard the story. I was, not especially a believer in, life after death. I hadn't read the literature. I hadn't read the books. But it was a week later, I was alone in my vacation house in Santa Fe. Doors locked. Printed out a document, 24-page document, and left the printer running, left the house for an hour and a half. I came back. So the ink was dry on this document. I stapled it. I wanted to study it. It had to do with all my business phone calls and meetings of the year. It was tax time. It was March. And I plopped it down on the bed, and I left the room for about 5 minutes, alone in the house. And when I came back into the room, 4 of the words in that document were very neatly and precisely blotted out by some kind of moist ink that was still, it was moist. It was still wet. This had just happened. It was clearly very deliberate. This is nothing dripping on a document. These 4 words, as the chemist said later, they were targeted. And I didn't know why, didn't know how it could have happened. I was alone in the house. I was really freaked out. I really was. Something like this happens to you. It just goes beyond your sense of reality or what's possible. But as I determined what the 4 words were, after a while it made sense to me as a message from Uncle Fari. And because I wasn't alone in this, but these kinds of things happened to other people, and then they continued to happen to me over time.
What were the 4 words?
The 4 words were spoke to Joe Amodi. Now, that may not mean much to anybody, and to me it didn't mean a lot at first either, because this is a man I barely knew that I'd had one phone conversation with in New York. But you have to understand that Fari Ackerman was the world's master punster, and he loved word games. His magazine, Famous Monsters, always was filled with puns and finding words within words to make jokes. And his caretaker and closest pal of the last 10 years or so of his life was a man named Joe Mo. And his name is contained within Joe Amodi. You've got Joe Mo right there in the middle of that name, spoke to Joe Mo. Well, the twist in this came for me when I called up Joe Mo, not because I understood this message or was even thinking about Amodi, but wanting to know if he had other documents from editor Fari Ackerman that showed how he crossed out words when he was preparing his magazine. Joe didn't even let me ask the question before he told me that he had an extraordinary experience after the tribute in which, like a very lucid dream that seemed absolutely real to him, Fari came to him to thank him for the tribute. And he said, Paul, he was like he was right in my room. It was like Fari came and spoke to me. And at that moment, my reaction was like, you put your hand on a stove or something. I just went into shock as I realized that the message was spoke to Joe Mo. It was a confirmation of the fact that he had received a real message. Now, this may sound like jumping to conclusions, and I didn't jump to any conclusions quickly. Believe me, 3 years of research went into all of the contacts. There were mediums involved that were enlisted by a university professor. Dr. Gary Schwartz, University of Arizona, Tucson, got involved. All of this is in the movie The Life After Death Project. Everything in it, as God is my witness, is true. It's a true documentation and account of all of these strange things that involve this apparent afterlife contact, messaging from someone I was very, very close with, and I discovered in the process of doing this, I am not alone, that an untold number of people have these kinds of experiences where they feel that something's happened to them that is utterly convincing, that they've heard from a loved one, somebody they're very close to, after they've passed away, with all kinds of anomalous effects. I think this phenomenon is real. I think that, my conclusion is that life goes on, consciousness goes on, that messaging between the worlds happens in some different form to some people.
Well, so you go to Forey Ackerman's house, and you take a crew with you, and you take some gear. What did you take, and who was with you?
Yeah, this happened years later after I made the movies, after I made the Life After Death project. I eventually got to know the owner of the 18-room house Forey had lived in for decades.
Where's the house?
It's on Glendower in the Los Feliz area of Los Angeles.
A creepy area right there.
Oh, a very expensive home.
Yes,
you can buy, maybe you can find a cheap home for $3 million.
Yeah.
His 18-room house in its heyday was a museum of science fiction props, horror literature of all kind, masks and monsters. He collected everything from the whole development of monster horror science fiction movies from the very earliest days of the silent films.
Right.
He was a fanatic, and he was a fountain of information. He was a walking encyclopedia, and he was a wonderful, sharing, kind, and generous human being that I was fortunate enough to really know and be helped by. Well, years later, I met the current owner of the house, and he said there had been continuing unexplained activity in the house of
such
paranormal nature.
Yes, such as?
Many sightings of a man in the house, sightings of a woman. Forey's wife had passed away in the house, by the way.
Okay.
The sounds of footsteps on the stairs in the upper landing when there was nobody else there. Strange shadows across a wall of human-like form. There's these stories about the shadow people, that kind of effect. Movement of objects, unexplained. Unexplained sounds.
Did the current owner of the house know about Forrest Ackerman?
He came to, he knew who Forey was when he bought the house. But he came to understand and respect this paranormal phenomena, especially on the occasion when he saw an apparition of a woman. He was asleep at night in one of the downstairs bedrooms, and there was a woman there that he could see through in the doorway to the bathroom. And really, it freaked him out. He said the apparition was gone when he turned on the light, but when he heard about my film, and again, the name is The Life After Death Project, when he heard about it, he got in touch with me. I got in touch with him. He invited me to come spend 4 days and 3 nights at the house and to bring in a team of researchers from around the whole country. We did this just 3 weeks ago. It was amazing.
Okay.
Amazing.
Tell me what happened. And, we're in a dark room right now. I want everybody to know, the bunker it's a little creepy in here. And I'm getting a little creeped out.
Well,
so this is...
Look, let me tell you, I don't get creeped out about this because I knew and loved Forey and loved his friends and his world, and he has a sense of humor. He has the most wonderful sense of humor, which continues to pervade these things that seem to flow from him. So the movie had documented many such events that happened over several years. And here, when we were together, let me tell you, we had Dr. Gary Schwartz and his wife there from University of Arizona, Tucson. There were 2 professional mediums there, Suzanne Wilson and Jamie Clark. There was Elizabeth Guiley, who has written like 50 books about the paranormal.
Right.
And her husband, Joe.
Right.
Then there were the skeptical scientific team, family Dieter and Netzine Steckless, and their two sons, one of whom I think is college age and the other is graduated, but they're very serious, scientifically minded young men that help in the scientific studies. The family, Steckless family, they'd raised their kids in Africa for a large part while they were doing guerrilla research, the Dian Fossey organization. Experts in guerrillas, university professors at University of Arizona, Tucson, and they
cool but dry.
Oh, yes, and, open-minded that this all could be possible, but they wanted to see the data.
Right. Just dry. I get it.
Now, Fari, he was obsessed about the movie King Kong. He'd seen it 100 times. The original King Kong, and then the remakes, and then Peter Jackson's. He just was infatuated with it, and he collected the original props from the original King Kong movie. He had the original Brontosaurus and the Stegosaurus, these decaying props. Well, what happened is that the Stecklesses were, around the time they were invited to come to this house they didn't know anything about, and they were in the dark, they hadn't been told, they were suddenly gifted a death mask of a giant gorilla. And it had such dignity, this mask, and it was so real, the expression on the face, and they brought it with them. And they slept downstairs in the big room that they didn't know had been Fari's office. And they opened the suitcase to show what they had brought. And there was the death mask of the gorilla. They took out of the suitcase and they placed it at what it would have been the foot of Fari's desk. And I could just feel Fari smiling over this. These were now, he adopted them as his people. Well, that was the feeling anyway. We also had the chemist John Allison from New Jersey with us, and there were some others that came in for part of the time, such as Joe Moe, who I have mentioned, and Sean Fernald, who knew Fari.
So about a dozen people, it sounds like.
Yeah, were involved in this, and we did all kinds of experimentation.
Okay, what was the gear? What was the gear? What did you bring with you?
Well, the whole house was mic'd, and cameras that could film in the dark, a parabolic mic, and they had computers with sensors that could sense very, very fine changes in electromagnetic fields. And from the first night, there were reports among others. This didn't happen to me, but there were reports from others of strange people coming into one of the bedrooms that didn't have a lock, in the middle of the night, one with a laser pointer shining it across the room. There was no one there in the house physically at the time this was reported who could have done that. There were reports of the vibrating bed at 3 a.m, where one of the researchers thought it was an earthquake. There was the report of the moving chair out on the balcony that could only be accessed from a certain bedroom, and the person sleeping in that bedroom didn't move it. But he had noticed where the chair was, and then in the morning, it had been moved.
Oh, man.
But the climax of it for me was there were two things, actually. One, I had brought a lot of things with me that had once been in that Acker mansion that I had acquired from the estate sale. And these were paintings and various kinds of objects that had once been owned by Fari.
Right.
And I put them in boxes that were numbered, and somebody else mixed them up, so I didn't even know what was in each box in each room. And Rosemary Guiley dealt with about 7 of those boxes. She didn't even touch them. And I asked for her impressions of what was inside. And 5 of the 7 she got dead on. Absolutely spot dead on. With detail. But that was amazing enough. But the highlight for me really was the seance, which brought forth from Suzanne Wilson so many things that seemed so specific to Fari. She hadn't done research. She
hold on.
You couldn't find these things online.
Hold on. Stop.
Yeah.
You guys did a seance.
Yeah.
In the classic sense.
Yeah.
Of a dead man.
Yeah.
In his house.
Yeah.
What are you, crazy?
No, Mark. Well, the owner of the house thought this was a good idea.
Well, yeah, it always sounds like a good idea.
Well, the other thing was it began with me formally thanking Fari, sort of embracing the whole idea of his friendship and asking for his continued help and understanding, communication.
Okay, set the scene here for me.
Yeah.
Midnight? Did you guys choose it?
We started, I think, at around 7:30 in the evening.
Was it dark?
At the beginning, it wasn't dark, but it was dark by the time we were done.
Oh, man. Candles?
Yeah, there were candles. There was the gorilla head was there, and objects that had belonged to Fari that I put out, like King Kong models and paintings of him and things like that. The key thing was when the skeptic, when Dieter Steckless, the gorilla man,
all 12.
We're all in the room, plus a couple of other visitors, including Joe Mo.
And you got video, audio running.
Yeah.
And okay.
Yeah, it starts out. I want to tell you, it starts out at the beginning with Suzanne.
This is just a bad idea, man. It's just
she's hearing from somebody who is a frenemy of Fari Ackerman, whose name is Howard. Who would that be? Well, I didn't have any clue. We all look around. We've all got blank faces. She says, last name begins with L. And Joe Mo says, oh, my God, H.P. Lovecraft. They had a love-hate relationship. Fari criticized the hell out of his horror writing early in his career, and eventually they kind of made up. So we're hearing from H.P. Lovecraft. And, Suzanne swears she didn't research anything about him. And I don't think look, I don't know if there's anything about the H.P. Lovecraft love-hate relationship with Fari online. I haven't looked myself. But it would have been contrary to her integrity to have done research. She swears she didn't, and I accept that at face value.
Okay.
But the highlight of it was when Dieter Steckless, the skeptic gorilla man, is sitting on a couch, and he's feeling the couch, and he's looking around, he's saying, the couch is vibrating. It's vibrating. And there was, Jamie Clark was also sitting on the couch. He felt it. Dieter's son reached out, felt the couch. The whole couch was like vibrating with energy. It wasn't like somebody shaking the couch with their foot.
It was like
yeah. And like had been described to the bed at 3 a.m. It was like the earthquake. And all the cameras are running, while this is happening. And his face is just turning white with shock over this. But the other thing about this is that the key moment that this happened was when someone, I think it was Suzanne, she started talking about the man, Montague Keen, who had worked with the skull experiments in England in Contacts with the Dead.
Yes.
And I'm sitting across the room from the couch. I got my camera rolling, and I can see the computer with the ultra sensors on it.
Mm-hmm.
And when Montague Keen is mentioned, I see EMF spiking all over the place, happening on the computer.
Mm-hmm.
And right at that moment, the couch starts to vibrate.
Shut up.
That's what happened.
Wow. And how long did it last?
I think the vibration was a couple of minutes.
Were you scared?
No, I was thrilled. I delighted, because my attitude about this is, Fari, just be a part of my life as much as you would like. I love having you still be part of my life.
Did he visit the seance?
Well, Suzanne was, yes. I mean, she was, she started ranting as for what he was feeling about his dissatisfaction with today's movies and the plots and the poor writing, the stories that don't make sense, the overproducing. And of course, I'd sat with Fari enough while he was alive to know that these were really his criticisms, that he just felt, in the old classic days, you had wonderful stories. And what the hell are they doing with some of these overproduced, horror movies today? And so she was expressing all of his feelings about that and other things that all seemed to jive with, as someone who knew him, it certainly made sense to me. And mind you, there's a lot of people who are atheists who take pride in the fact that they can count Fari Ackerman among their fold as a disbeliever in all this.
Right.
Who feel that we're perverting his message where he can't defend himself because we're saying, no, we think we are hearing from him. He's keeping his promise to have dropped us a line. He wants us to know. That's my conclusion about all of this,
It's something that I'm totally fascinated with, and you know what? We're up against our last break, and then we'll pick up right there when we come back. But it's one of my things, and not only with Houdini, but my own family and so forth. I would like to experience it, and just to know that I'm not hearing somebody else's version of it that I have to swallow.
Yeah.
I want my own experience, and we'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Tonight, Paul David's back right after this.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
10 o'clock.
Okay, so we have another half hour.
Attention, all Fader Knots. Studio Dome has a special deal on their SD1 Bluetooth speaker. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on their banner, enter the promo code Jimmy, and you get $40 off and free shipping on the SD1. It's voice activated, comes with a USB antenna, cables, and a carry bag. Never listen to your phone, tablet, or laptop speakers ever again. It's the only way to listen to Fade to Black. That's jimmychurchradio.com, Studio Dome banner, promo code Jimmy. Go Beckley Teppy.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to jimmychurchradio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRAradio.com.
Hey everybody, what's up? Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and check this out. The 2015 MUFON Symposium will be held this September 24th through the 27th in beautiful downtown Irvine, California. Expanding ufology, opening new doors in academia, industry, and media. Former Defense Minister of Canada Paul Hellyer will be there in person. Former CNN news anchor Cheryl Jones, TV news journalist Jaime Maussan, and MUFON's chief photo analyst Mark D'Antonio. They're just a few of the growing list of names for the 2015 event. It's September 24th through the 27th at the beautiful Hotel Irvine. Get your tickets today at MUFONsymposium.com. That's MUFONsymposium.com. Go Beckley Teppy.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
The mics were open, and now you know how I really feel. Did you guys hear that? I'm watching Twitter right now. Mic's open. We can hear everything. So now you know how I feel about the Apollo missions. See, I'm not joking. When I say things on this show, I really believe them. And right now, during the commercial break, Paul and I were talking about the Apollo missions, and this is what I said, and I'll clarify right now for everybody that was wondering what was going on in the background. We were talking about life after death, and then we were talking about the Apollo missions, and I said, look, man, I grew up, I wanted to be an astronaut. I believe in the United States of America. I believe in our military. I believe in us. I believe in all of that. And that's what I wanted to do. But today, I just don't think we went to the moon. That's where I'm at. And then I turned to Paul and I said, see this cell phone? And I hold up my cell phone. I said, this baby's got more computing power than all of the Kennedy Space Center's computers at that time combined, and I carry this around with me today in my pocket, and that technology back then, and I look at it today, and I look back, and I just think, man, it's impossible. And just getting through the Van Allen belt and the radiation, and you're telling me that, those spacesuits on the face of the moon had enough air conditioning to, we're talking about the vacuum of space and the insulation power that is there. And the sun rays coming out of those suits and heating up those guys on the inside. I don't care what those air conditioners were carrying on their backs, man. There's just no way. They would have been cooked meat. It would have been bacon on the surface of the moon instantly. That's my own take today, and that's where I'm at. Okay, Paul, are you there?
Yeah, I am of totally the alternative opinion on that one.
And well, which is fine. I get that. I suppose there's the possibility. But, and the other thing is, the Russians were monitoring everything that we were doing and making sure that we did go to the moon and making sure that we had a spacecraft. They were monitoring things. So how would we pull that side of it off? Well, man, you just shoot a spacecraft out there without men in it, and you send that to the moon, and you let that orbit and whatever. But as far as human beings being there, man, I just don't know. And the fact that radiation.
Don't express your opinion to astronaut Edgar Mitchell.
Well, and again, and I respect that. And if it was all a hoax, and it was, then you know what? Those guys were employed, and they believe in country and so forth, and they're going to take that story to their grave. That's fine. I get that. If it was a hoax, then yes, they're gonna live that till. When you look at, I don't want to get too much off subject here, but Paul, when you look at the interviews of Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin after the press conferences and stuff, and you look at those guys, they don't look too enthused, and you would think that after that.
Maybe they didn't look enthused because there were other secrets that resulted from the mission that they had to keep. I'm more likely to believe that.
You think so?
Absolutely.
Running into E.T. on the surface of the moon?
They ran into stuff on the surface of the moon. I think that I don't buy everything Richard Hoagland has to say, hook, line, and sinker, but I think basically he's got it. He's on the right track.
Well, and again, it could be that. What I do know is what my eyes tell me, and those guys were uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And they looked like they were doing a dance.
Yeah. You'd be uncomfortable, too, if you saw a great tower there on the moon that couldn't be explained and you were not allowed to mention this to anybody.
Well, when you go back and you listen to those old tapes and you listen to some of the stranger portions of it, where a discussion about they're there on the edge of the crater looking at us, and what are they talking about? What is the reference to? And the references to what the craft looked like, and that they that's a pretty fascinating conversation to try to explain away. And then, of course, the references to Santa Claus, and I find that fascinating too as well. And it was a lot of conversations between themselves and Houston that were completely out of context to what they should be talking about while they're walking around on the moon. And so, what is it that they were talking about? And what's the hidden message there? Could it be that E.T. was there? I just have a hard time with the wafer-thin skin of the Apollo capsule and stuff, where they're floating through the Van Allen belt. I hear, and that radiation and what they're confronted with. And not only that, but it's the idea of being superheated inside of a can like that, and the excuse that or the explanation is, well, they rotated, as one side of the capsule got hot, it was rotated, and the cool side was then heated up by the sun, and they kept this constant rotation up. You know what? I think it would be superheated when you go up to water boils at 100 degrees, and the inside of that capsule is getting heated up to 250 degrees. I cook meat in the oven at 250 degrees. So that's a crazy thing to kind of swallow, that technology back then, and that's how they dealt with it, and also the radiation. I don't know. I'm just uncomfortable with it. It doesn't sit with me like it did when I was 10 and going to the moon. It just sounded fascinating, and let's do this and stuff. But today, I'm not so sure.
Well, I have to say, as your guest tonight, I have heard all of the arguments about we didn't go to the moon theory, and I do not accept that premise.
What about you're a director? You went to film school. Oh, you went to AFI, right? Right
American
there,
Film Institute.
Yeah, right there in the middle of Hollywood. What's it on?
It's now on Western, but when I was there, it was in the Doheny Mansion in Beverly Hills.
Oh, okay. I got you. But anyway, you go to AFI and you're going to study Kubrick.
Yeah.
And you bring in this Kubrick theory and aspect into all of this too as well. Doesn't it add fuel to the fire?
No. No. I mean, I don't rule out that. I mean, this is complete speculation. I'm not sure it's worth anything, but I don't rule out that a possible backup in case of great embarrassment, there might have been some film put in the can somewhere in case it was needed. I don't think it was needed. And I think that it was the great technological engineering achievement that it was described to be.
You sound reserved. You sound reserved all of a sudden. You don't have to.
I've been very uncomfortable with the conspiracy theories on this subject all along. You see, I'm very invested in the knowledge that there has been ET contact. I think that's the most important thing. That was the game changer, and it's completely real to me. And the testimony that I've heard about it, and I have always regarded this "we didn't go to the moon" argument as a distraction. So I prefer to let that one go.
Well,
you're entitled to disagree with me 100%. It doesn't matter.
Well, we're talking about two different subjects, though. The Apollo.
No, not really, because I do think that the "we didn't go to the moon" stuff was generated as a sort of antidote for the UFO disclosures that were happening about the time that those claims began to come forward.
Well, are you suggesting then that
as a distraction?
Yes. So you're suggesting that the Apollo hoax?
No hoax.
Okay. The Apollo hoax story.
Yeah.
Was also disinfo?
Oh, absolutely.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, again, like we were talking earlier, you just don't know when you pile on the disinfo conspiracy side of things.
You don't know where it ends.
You don't know where it ends because it one story goes into the next, and it kind of folds over like a really good cream.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, also, when you look at, I was talking about them earlier today, when you talk about when you put on the table Richard Doty and Paul Benowitz and what went on at Kirkland Air Force Base.
Oh, yes. Fascinating.
Yeah, and you pull in that aspect. That is documented American history. That's it. That actually happened. And Doty did what he did. And everybody else that was part of that whole circle of events. But Paul Benowitz died a very tragic death.
Yes.
And it was brought on, I don't care how you slice this pie, but Doty is responsible, and he should be in prison. Yeah. And he's hiding behind the fact that he was taking orders from above.
Excellent book about this, by the way, Project Beta.
Yeah, excellent book. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And a really good...
would have made a good film.
Well, the documentary that just came out about it too is really good. Now, excuse me. So when we look at that, then we know that disinfo is 100% real.
Yeah.
And the Air Force and the government and the CIA will go to great lengths to A, twist your mind up, B, get disinfo out there so your twisted mind is repeating what you are being shown, and C, total disregard for morality. They don't care. If people die in the wake of this, in the mess of all of this, and bodies are falling behind us, so be it. But disinfo is our game, and that's what we're going to do with it.
Did you see the rather extraordinary movie about the cracking of the code, the German code during World War II.
You're talking... Yeah, well, that's another example. Yes.
The Imitation Game.
Yeah, the Imitation Game.
Now, one of the points that was made there was at the point where they had cracked the code, and they knew the Germans were planning a specific attack that could result in quite a number of Allied ships going down, quite a lot of soldiers on our side dying, unless action was taken. But they felt that if they did take that action, that it would clue off to the Germans that we'd cracked their code and that we knew. And they let those soldiers die to protect the secret of the fact that the code had been cracked.
Right.
So they evaluated, like putting on a scale, the human lives that are going to be lost because you don't take action in that case, against the value of keeping the great secret.
Right.
And we have to think about all of these things, about the ET mysteries, with that kind of perspective. Someone out there is balancing all of these things on that scale. What are you willing to sacrifice? What lies are you willing to tell? What nonsense are you willing to let the public believe in order to protect the big secret that they believe needs to be wrapped, in all this cloak of disinformation? Now, where we get into trouble is the fact that in a free society, we ask ourselves, well, who is it who has the right to decide that the kernel of truth within all of those blankets of lies needs to be kept from us? Who has that godlike authority to decide that there are things of critical importance for the human race, whether they're technological developments or fundamental philosophical answers to things like, are we alone in the universe, that the rest of us don't have the right to know because somebody has decided, for reasons of national security, technology secrecy, or military necessity, have to be enshrouded in the web of lies. Somebody's making that decision, and we, you and me, and all of those who have the same concerns we do, we're at the losing end of that. And we're tired of that. When I say we're mad as hell and we don't want to take it anymore, that's what I'm talking about. Can't somebody reevaluate the extent of secrecy on these core issues and break through this national security secrecy web to the point of letting there be some daylight in there? There isn't any now. There just isn't.
Well, I can't not take advantage of having a successful director from Hollywood sit in front of me here in the bunker and not ask a couple of questions that I have to put on the table.
Okay.
Okay. Number one, with the prevalence and the obvious mass release of films coming out of Hollywood, especially over the last 20 years, that deal with us fighting ET in one sense or another, and it doesn't matter if it's Transformers or Signs or pick any. A movie about this. They come out every single month out of Hollywood. It's a guaranteed successful blockbuster film. They're going to make their money back, and there's such a volume of. Is there a message coming out of Hollywood on the ET subject when this is what is spoon-fed into society nearly on a daily basis? What is there a message?
Absolutely.
There?
Absolutely, yes. And it's been there from the beginning of the era of science fiction films. And that has to do with what Richard Hoagland has referred to as the time-release aspirin. The drip, drip, drip by which we're gradually acclimated into a new way of thinking about things. Do you think that our parents' generation could have conceived of the world and the universe in terms of, let's say, the Star Wars model? All of these different races, all of these different planets, hyperspace drives, interaction between these different species, monitoring what's going on other planets. This was not part of the mindset. Today, every kid can think in those terms. And I think for most of the younger generation, if the powers that be finally get around to disclosing what they've known for the last 70 years, that there are extraterrestrials of intelligence who are sharing this reality with us, that are in contact with us. Most of the kids are going to say, why is that front page news? We've known that, since we were 8.
Right.
And someone once said that the great advances in science don't come from those who make the breakthroughs convincing their peers who are the skeptics to change their minds. It comes about through the death of one generation being replaced by another generation who can accept a new reality. I love the model, the religious model of Moses and the children of Israel and the Promised Land. They crossed the Red Sea and they could have taken the direct route to Canaan and gotten there in a short period of time. But in the Jewish tradition, Moses wanders through the desert with the children of Israel for 40 years because he doesn't want the old generation that were slaves in Egypt to be the founders of the new land, of the new Holy Land. He wants it to be the next generation who never experienced that slavery. And in a way, that's what we're seeing. The older generations are dying. The greatest generation, as we call them, who fought World War II, there are fewer and fewer of them. As time marches on a little bit, you're going to see fewer and fewer of those who remember the Korean War and Vietnam as their personal experience. And the world will be populated by the young who grew up with these great, extraordinary technologies that exist today that we certainly never had when we were younger. Never had the computers. We, had manual typewriters. We were happy to have an electric typewriter. So the world is changing not so much through the changing of minds, but through the passage of time. And that's the way it's always been.
What's your favorite, let's do movie first. What's your favorite science fiction film?
I have to say I really respect The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original 1950 Robert Wise film.
Oh, man.
You know
what? Not only is that great, but the special effects and the way that movie was done, I don't know why, even with the best CGI today, I still haven't seen a flying saucer that friggin' cool. And the robot, too, as well.
Well, and I wouldn't want this conversation to go by without mentioning the great visionary producer, George Pal, producer-director, who I had the great good fortune to know. And his 4 contributions to that field. First was Destination Moon.
Yes.
Showing 10 years before the Apollo missions how we could get to the moon in a dramatic production. He did When Worlds Collide.
Yep.
Which showed the tremendous danger of collision with the Earth from a heavenly body.
Still holds its own today. Love that movie.
He did The Conquest of Space.
Yes, he did.
Which dealt with space stations in orbit, which was visionary at that time. And then the use of that space station as to propel us to a trip to Mars. And, of course, he did The War of the Worlds, based on H.G. Wells. And that classic movie from 1953 stands up as a great warning of what the danger could be of contact from space that might be hostile.
Right.
And it was simply a magnificently told story and movie. So George Pal, with those 4 contributions, not even mentioning the time machine,
right,
is one of the great visionaries of his era, certainly equal to George Lucas in his day.
Well, what about Forbidden Planet?
Masterful, absolutely masterful, so important. 1956, MGM, Robbie the Robot, the Krell, Walter Pidgeon. The importance of showing the significance of advanced alien technology being studied by a human who has the power to withhold his discoveries from his home planet Earth until he deems that the human race is ready to receive it. And isn't that exactly the dilemma that we're in right now, that we're talking about, that we're all having trouble with?
And how about, for me, I think I just can't ever remove this film for being my number 1 science fiction film of all time, which is 2001: A Space Odyssey. And you go to film school. How much did you guys pick that film apart? And can you find a fault in that film?
Well, we did pick it apart, and we love the film and we respect it. I feel it's very slow moving. I mean, Stanley Kubrick does that sometimes. He's so slow and deliberate and mystifying. One of the great lessons in 2001, I thought, was the whole cover story they used to conceal the discovery of the obelisk on the moon.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, they described that there was a plague, a breakout of a plague there at the base. And that, of course, was a cover story and a total lie to conceal the fact that an astonishing discovery had been made. And by saying that you had a plague, of course, it kept everybody away.
Right.
And only those with a need to know were ushered in to, to see that great, they didn't call it an obelisk. I forget what they called
monolith.
it.
The monolith.
Yeah, the monolith. And then, of course, its ending, the mystery of the ending, which suggests, death and rebirth. It's just an incredible scene of death and then the baby emerging, new life.
Yeah, I put together a list one time. It kind of escapes me now, but I've kind of committed it to memory. But when you look at some of the, these huge, big budget movies, going back to like 2001, and then today you have like Prometheus, and then you have Close Encounters or E.T., Pacific Rim. I'm trying to think the recent stuff. Ender's Game, Battleship, Battle Los Angeles. All of the all of the Transformer movies are dealing with, this great battle here, us against them, and
Independence Day.
Independence Day, District 9. Yeah, you're absolutely right. In a weird way, Men in Black, all three of them are dealing with it. And War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
Mars Attacks. know, it's a
and Men in Black, of course, showing the great success of humor in getting across the message.
Yeah, and Mars Attacks in the same way.
Yeah.
All of it in a weird way is preparing our consciousness for something. And like you said, our children of today, they know exactly what to do when they get here.
But between Star Wars, you mentioned the fact that I wrote with my wife 6 of the Star Wars sequel novels, and Star Trek. All of it has paved the way for the future. Was it Ben Rich who said that we have the secret to take E.T. home?
Yeah. We have the technology.
We have that technology. It's just locked up somewhere, So, what, Jimmy? I know we don't have much time.
No, we got about a minute left.
I want your audience to know that I've done such a variety of films. About 10, and from Starry Night about Vincent van Gogh, Before We Say Goodbye, which is about Catholic mysteries and the Virgin of Guadalupe, The Artist and the Shaman. Timothy Leary's Dead, the biography of Timothy Leary, The Sci-Fi Boys, award-winning history of science fiction.
Great film, by the way.
Thank you. And then, of course, we discussed tonight the Life After Death Project, Roswell, my new one, Marilyn Monroe, Declassified. There is a unifying theme. Did I say Starry Night, Van Gogh?
Yes, you did.
The unifying theme of what I have looked for again and again is the righteous, I hate to use the word warrior, but the person who's made a discovery, or who has knowledge or talent, or has given a gift to mankind, which is very, very important, but who suffers being debunked and ridiculed and put down in his lifetime, and has to suffer that fate. And you see it again and again, whether we're talking about Vincent van Gogh or whether we're talking about Jesse Marcel in Roswell, even Forrest J. Ackerman, the champion of science fiction, who was debunked in his time for having the audacity of saying we'd get to the moon in his lifetime.
Right.
I think we did. But that's the kind of theme that I've pursued again and again. In the case of Marilyn Monroe, I think unjustly classified as a probable suicide when she was a victim of much larger political events on the world stage, and I am convinced was very tragically eliminated.
Real quick, we've got 10 seconds, and then I got to roll credits here. Website.
Well, there's pauldavids.com, and then my art, pauldavids-artist.com. And then a website for each of the movies, like lifeafterdeathproject.com, jesusinindiathemovie.com, etc.
Okay, very good. Hey, what do you think of the artwork here?
I see a lot of grays adorning the walls.
That is Carol Peralt, and she is so good, and that's who she is. She's very talented, very, very good stuff. All right, thank you to Paul Davids. Paul, live in the studio tonight. I had a great time. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Fade to Black's executive producers, Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Paulman, Mark D. Kovar. Thanks to LJ3, Renee, Mark Dunbar, and Jonas. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Bateau, and Mark D. Kovar. Fady is by Dale. Webmaster is Method of Signaling. Music is this guy right here, Doug Aldrich. He also did the Transformers. Intro by Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication, KGRA, The Planet. Tomorrow night is Fader Night. That's right, Rock and Rule Trivia. Again, special thanks to Paul Davids. Hanging out with me tonight live in the studio. My name is Jimmy Church. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Everybody be safe. We'll see you right here tomorrow night. See ya.